Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I am the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void live. It's Thursday, April the 3rd, 2025. It is the last show this week, and we're going to get down into the deep, literally into the deep recesses of your mind. If this is your first time listening to the broadcast, then just want you to know we talk about all things void walking, which means most things having to do with fringy stuff, but especially conscious exploration. All right. And I apologize again, and I thank you for your patience for the late start. We've had some crazy storms, so I'm dealing with floods in here. I've got water that's almost all the way to the desk here, but I've mopped it back. We got storms coming all week, and it's crazy. I haven't lost power. I usually lose power out here, but I don't think, I think the tech gods are wanting us to keep this going. Great show last night with Juan Ayala, and tonight we'll have JM Debord, who will be coming on shortly. But I wanted to get into something that we often forget about, and I think that it's very important not to forget, is the power of our imagination. So whenever we're conscious exploring, it really doesn't matter if we're meditating, if we're getting out of body, if we're doing dream work, whatever. The idea is that one of the ways that we get to understand the spirit world, or speak with it, what we call the spirit world, okay, is through symbolism. So trying to be your guide through the weird and the wonderful tonight, but we're going to be diving into something wild a little bit from Carl Jung before we get into JM Debord's work, which is called active imagination. I haven't talked about it too much because, you know, people look at the imagination like it's fake, but it's not. In fact, it's very real. So it's kind of like chatting with your dreams, or imagine that you could paint your fears or dance with your shadow. It sounds crazy, maybe. But Jung thought it was how we unlock the unconscious. So in 2025, with all this chaos, for sure, all this chaos, I'm betting it's worth a shot. So we could try to figure this out together. So Jung, if you don't know who Carl Jung was, I'm sure most of you know, but he was this like Swiss genius. He was a psychologist, a dreamer, a myth chaser, amongst other things too. And active imagination was his trick, so to speak. And it really was the way he speaks about it. It was his trick for wrestling with the stuff that's bubbling up in our minds. So I want to try to break down how it works, why it matters, and maybe, you know, we might be able to do it on the show, which I don't know if I've got the courage to pull that off, but we could unpack this idea. You know, I just got through watching a really cool show. I think you guys should watch it. But it made me think of this, too. The show's called The House of David. And that show has everything to do with the story of David in the Bible. Now, however you look at the Bible, it doesn't matter. But the idea of David facing the giant with nothing but a rock and taking down the giant, in fact, with such courage that he tells him, he says, I'm going to feed your head to the birds of the air, is what he tells him. And everybody in Israel was afraid. So here we have a whole story of a person, David, right, rising up into his, I guess, higher self, or what God had meant for him to be. But in order to do that, he had to face tremendous fear, things that scare most people. And the idea isn't that you're not supposed to be afraid. So when I talk about facing your fears, or anytime we talk about that, it doesn't mean that you're not afraid. You're always going to be afraid. As a matter of fact, the closer you get to the fear, the thing that you should face, the more afraid that you're going to get. It could be trembling. And the reason why I want to talk about active imagination so much is because I've used this to the point where when I've done it, that I've become so afraid that my body was shaking. That's how real it can get if you practice it enough. So what is this like active imagination thing? So try to picture this, okay? You're not just daydreaming. You're stepping into it. There's a way to do this with scrying too, but we'll stick with Carl Jung stuff, okay? And I'm sure JM will have a lot to say about this too when he calls in, but you're stepping into it. And Jung said it's like the bridge to the unconscious. But he also said anytime that you make the unconscious conscious is how you're going to overcome everything. Like you're going to be a victim to everything in life, and you're going to call that fate until you bring the unconscious conscious. See, I think as humans, we have this like inevitable kind of longing for power. We like to be in control of as much stuff as we can. And sometimes we have a hard time letting go of things that we can't control. I can tell you for sure, I'm a control freak sometimes. But Jung said that this was a bridge to the unconscious, those hidden bits of us that we ignore. And all of us, make no mistake about it, we ignore it. No matter how aware we think we are or how spiritual we claim to be, there's always a level of something that we're ignoring that we need to deal with. And it gets deeper and deeper. Now, another reason why I want to talk about this too is because if you have a full-fledged out-of-body experience, the thing about it is that stuff will come into the OBE world too. It's not impervious to ever showing up to any form of conscious exploration. In fact, it shows up more when you're doing conscious exploration. So instead of waiting for someone to decode our dreams, which is cool, you can grab a pen, a canvas, or you can even just use your voice and just start to let the inner stuff talk. So he cooked this up after splitting with Freud back in the 1910s. It's like him and Freud didn't agree on a lot of things because this method isn't passive. It's not like meditating or dreaming or whatever, and then you're just writing it down. That's why it's called active imagination. You're going to be participating in what's going on. You don't just watch the movie in your head, okay? You direct it which is cool. And all the D&D players out there are going to love this. A matter of fact, I think if anybody that's into board games or D&D is a real nerd like I am, you're going to love this. So, for instance, let's say maybe a dragon shows up and you just kind of ask it, like, what's your deal? I'm no young, but that's pretty bold, right? So when you ask a dragon what's your deal, then you're supposed to allow it to do its thing. And it's hard at first. It feels weird at first. Almost like I told you about when you talk to yourself, that feels weird too. So it feels weird to play with your imagination because you forgot how to do it. Most of us forgot. You forgot that when you were a kid, it was the number one thing that you did to occupy your time. Now, in a year, I think of like all of this AI stuff and endless screens and phones. And I wonder, and I've brought this up before, but I wonder if we're losing that inner dialogue, the inner chat. I'm not a person I'm just doing this stuff with you, okay? Please never come to this channel thinking that you're going to find some expert in anything. Like, it's not that way. We explore consciousness together. But Carl Jung's method, I believe, of active imagination is one of the most powerful methods to deal with things that you need to deal with. You ever hear people say things like, yeah, you got this trauma, or you have these issues, or you have mother issues, you have daddy issues, or I have trauma. And then other people say, you just need to heal. You just haven't finished healing yet. Was anybody ever taught you like how to heal? Well, how do you do that? How am I supposed to process this stuff? Because just acknowledging the problem alone doesn't heal it, does it? If it's buried into your unconscious, it's really down there. So I can tell you, for instance, I have certain cycles myself. I have certain, I would say, two big things in my life. One has to do with food, and another one has to do with relationships. And these cycles, they come back around over and over and over again. And at that point, when you're having cycles like that, you should always step back and don't look at it, if you can, okay? Try not to look at it as like a curse or a family curse. It could be, but we're talking about just empowerment here, right? Like trying to do something about it. So try not to do that. Try not to look at it as fate, and then realize something's going on, right? Like something's happening that I'm not taking care of. Something deep, deep down inside me that I'm not taking care of. So a lot of people talk about this, right? They're like, you just need to process it. You need to heal it. Well, I'm telling you right now, Dreamwork is one way to work with these things. Active imagination lets you participate in the healing of what's going on in your unconscious. So, I do think though, with all of the information overload stuff that we're getting, which is fine. I think that's fine. I don't want to lose my train of thought here, but I can tell you why. I'll just tell you right now, all the truth that's coming out. People can't bullshit us anymore. If you start bullshitting people, someone's going to come around and check you, which is a good thing. It's a good thing for us. It's a good thing for me. Something needs to keep us accountable all the time. But other than that, we're being bombarded with stuff, right? So I'm just saying, if you can, take a little time, whatever it is. Please, if you want to do psychedelics or whatever, do it, fine. But keep this separate. Like, keep this as a natural thing. Try not to take anything beforehand. Just learn active imagination and do it in a natural way and just see the power of it. Okay. I don't have any judgments against people that take psychedelics to heal inner stuff, because that works too. I think it works. I believe in it. But Jung saw it as like a meeting with archetypes. Okay. Big players like the hero or the shadow. I tried this with like doodling once, and I got a weird face staring back. It was creepy, but cool. And have you ever had that? or something kind of creepy starts happening when you try, if you've tried active imagination, it's creepy enough to be cool? I think so. It's half therapy, half art. That's why it's hard to talk about. And if you go back and listen to the episode that I did with Becca Tarnez, I think she is a really big advocate for stuff like this. So this is how it's done. And I need to pull his phones up to make sure I don't miss JM's call when he calls in. So this is how it's done. Jung's got steps. Kinda. So first, you want to quiet down, right? You want to relax yourself, which is, I think you should do that before you do anything. So maybe some breathing, some rhythmic breathing, doing the box breathing. I have audios for relaxation. You could pull up some YouTube videos or just relax the way you know how, but get in a really quiet place. I would say even as like creepy quiet if you can. Okay. And then begin to meditate and breathe. Ditch the phone. Put the phone away. Okay? Just set it to the side. Then it's almost like, it's weird me even saying this because I'm revealing like a lot of weird stuff here. But then it's almost like you let something rise up in you. A dream perhaps, or a mood. A random image. You guys know what I'm talking about. If you've practiced with hypnagogia, then you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you can do hypnagogic exercises and just random images will start coming up. You're like, what the hell is that? Don't try to control it. Just let it come up. Okay? And then I read that like he'd see visions, like a guy in a boat. So the moment you see a vision of some kind that happens to come up, that's when you dive in. You dive into what's going on. And you're going to have to practice this a lot, because before I go any further, I'll tell you why. Because there's a part of you that's going to want to control everything. You're going to feel weird. There's going to be that voice in your head that's judging you. And remember, that voice wasn't there. When you were playing with your imagination as a child, that voice wasn't there so much, right? It wasn't there until people started going, you're being silly, or it's just your imagination, or whatever. And when the judgment started coming in, that's when you started like programming these neural things into your mind to tell you that it's not real. But there was a time in your life when none of that mattered. I think for all of us, there was a time in our life when none of that mattered. So you got to pick your medium, like write it, draw it, talk to it. I'm not a very good artist. I tried the drawing thing and it got pretty creepy for me. So I tend to speak. So if you ever like happen to come to my house or whatever, it would be weird because I'd be sitting in my recliner pretty much with my eyes closed, talking to myself. That's what it would look like in the quote real world. But it's easier for me to do that because I'm a jabber. I like to talk. So Jung would scribble these dialogues with his inner figures like Philemon or Philemon, however you, I say Philemon, but this was just like this wise old dude he met in his head. And if you read the Red Book, you know who that is, okay? And then something happens, like you start wrestling with it. You ask it questions, you feel it out. It's not just a cool story that you're making up in your head, because what will end up happening, and what I find super, super fascinating about this, because you're actively participating in this, the unconscious will start to bring things up. And when that happens, it is the freaking coolest thing in the world. For me it is. For a conscious explorer it is. Because something will, how do I explain it? Like, when you know it's working is when something comes up and you think to yourself, like, where the hell did that come from? I didn't say that. I wasn't thinking, at least I don't think I was thinking that, but you were. So you get caught in this kind of inner hypnagogic place. It's not really like hypnagogia, but you're in this place where you're not quite sure if you're slipping. Maybe it said something to you that you didn't think about, or at least you think you didn't think about. And again, this is where, like, I had to do this and still have to do this to get better and better at it. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at this. Now, I'm talking about healing yourself. Most people never taught you how to heal yourself. Carl Jung taught us how to do this. You know, even when I went to therapy and stuff, people would say, well, you have this. They would identify things. You have, let's see, you have abandonment issues. You have obviously some mother issues because your mother was never there. You've got some issues with that. You've got some authority issues. Okay, I got these issues. Now tell me how do I fix it? Well, then they'll say things like, well, becoming aware of the problem is first, right? It's like knowing is half the battle. Maybe try, some dialogue with your father. Like maybe bring your father, and they want to start bringing other people into therapy, and it's like, that's going to be a nightmare. So Carl Jung was like, you don't have to do all that. Your unconscious has this stuff under there. It will bring out things, characters, archetypes, things that you need to deal with. It will bring them to the surface, and you can deal with them on a level that's safe. And when I say safe, I mean you're not hurting anybody. Because if you have pain, if you have trauma, if you have something you need to deal with, and you haven't healed it, then there is 100% chance, unless you remain in isolation all your life, that it's going to affect someone else, or you're going to hurt somebody. You're going to say something you don't do, or you're going to do something you don't want to do. So if you have empathy for others and yourself, which is very important, right? Like, it's cool to want to heal it. But you heal it in this way, doesn't bother anybody. Okay? So you could pick a medium. Like I said, write it down, draw it, talk to yourself, and wrestle with it. Ask it questions, feel it out. Sometimes you might get in a battle with it. Like you read this story in the Bible, how Jacob wrestled with the angel, or like the David and Goliath thing. You guys got to see that show. If you're into like Bible stories and stuff, House of David's a really good show. But I know that it does seem like it's just a cool story. But the thing is you don't realize it till later. But you're changing yourself. You're doing the work. And the reason why you'll know you're doing the work is because it'll start to bring up emotions, or the dialogue or the battle or whatever you're doing in the active imagination becomes difficult. You might even become fearful or not know how to deal with something. So there it is. It's in your face, inside of you, right there. Say, like, for example, we can do this with Dreamwork too, but we have to participate in it, okay? Like, say I dream of a locked door, and I imagine participating and turning the key. So what's behind it? Like maybe a dog, a snarling dog. And then I would ask the dog, why are you mad? Now, Jung would say that that's the unconscious talking back. Also, so that sounds nuts, right? But I get it. But I think individually and still collectively, even in 2025, there's all kinds of locked doors that we're scared to open, right? I would love for people to be so comfortable with this that we could do it on a group level. But also, I still have that kind of void walking thing in my head. Like, does this really work, or is it just like fancy pretending? And you'll have to forgive me, but I always have a little bit of doubt with everything I do, a little bit of skepticism, even if it's from people like Carl Jung or whoever. And I think that's healthy, but Jung swore that this healed him post, Freud meltdown, but he was a mess. So the real question is, what do you think? Do you think that I'm nuts for trying this? I don't think it's too nutty to try something like this. Let's go to what's up, Domac? What's up, brother? So Paulina says, like, you don't know how you came up with a solution, etc., because once this is presented, you didn't know that info, nor would you come up with it. Yeah, like yeah, sort of. I think it works different for everybody. Robert Moore took this a step further. Now, Robert Moore has passed away, but I really love his work, and I want to get into this later on the 4 archetypes of what he called mature masculinity. He's a Jungian. So he would use active imagination to work with 4 archetypes, and he specifically wanted men to work with 4 archetypes. One was the king. The other one was, and I've talked about this before, the lover, the magician, and the warrior. And all of these archetypes had shadow sides too. This is how I really found how interesting this was, because I did practice what he talked about, and I kind of sat with myself and I spoke to each person. It's like having a board meeting with yourself, except each archetype represents something. And it made me realize that a lot of my decisions that I've made in my life were the shadow side. It's hard to say this. A lot of decisions that I made in my life were from the shadow side of the lover. See, the magician, the king, and the warrior didn't even get to speak. I just let the lover do what it wanted to do, because love's the answer for everything. But if you sit back and you have a board meeting with all 4 archetypes, and for women, I imagine it would be, queen, high priestess, warrior, right? And lover, right? That's the unifying one that we both have. So I'm thinking it could work both ways. It's like the 4 walls on the pyramid. And the way a pyramid's structured is you're at your ultimate peak when all 4 are solid. That's why in the esoteric and occult, you always see squares or pyramids as a resemblance for a foundation or power. In the tarot too. In a pyramid, if you take out one side, the rest of it falls. But if you build all of the sides equally, I don't want to say power, because that's going to build your ego up, but your potential is at its peak. So if you sat back and you worked with all 4 archetypes, let's say I have a board meeting. This is how I would use Carl Jung's active imagination. I have a major decision I'm going to make in my life, and I'm usually impulsive. Thanks, Craig, for the 20, brother. Appreciate that. Appreciate it, bro. Most of the time, I would let the shadowy lover make the decision, or the magician. I'd try to analyze it like a magician does, intellectually analyze it to death. But if I just took the time and listened and spoke with the king, the warrior, the lover, and the magician, let them fight it out. Let all 4 of those fight it out until they come to an agreement. Then that would probably be the best decision I could make. In fact, the more I thought about it, I was like, man, if I would have let these 4 archetypes, just these 4 basic archetypes, use an active imagination, help me with all of the big decisions in my life, not only would my entire life be different, the cause and effect and the ripple effect of everything in my life would be different, but I would really learn to speak with the unconscious. So it's cool to do dream work. And that's one of the big things I want to talk about tonight. But it's even better when we can participate in it. And I know what you're thinking, right? It's like, well, why don't you just lucid dream, right? Well, yeah, lucid dreaming is one way to do it. But most of the people, including myself, when we do lucid dreaming, we're having fun with it, because it's very rare that we become that lucid in a dream. And in a dream, there are no limits. So we tend to play a lot and explore, the lucid dreaming world the way we want to. But if you have, let's just say if you have the discipline not to do that, then it would be a perfect time to work with these archetypes. Now, I'm still chewing on this, okay? Because so far, I feel like it's working. But I need time to make sure this stuff is really healing me. Because one, I don't have the resources to sit in front of a Jungian analyst or a Jungian psychologist 4 times a week to make sure that I'm doing this right. So it's a little bumpy for me. I myself am like just figuring out how to do this. Another person that you could go to learn how to do this is Gordon White. Now, Gordon White he's a chaos magician, but he's been talking about this kind of same thing for a while. If you signed up to his membership program, I think it's like $10 a month, and I took it a while back. I kind of stepped back from it because I thought, well, this isn't out-of-body stuff. He's talking about active imagination. But I should have never done that. Like, I should have went all the way through it. So Gordon has a whole course on how to do this stuff too. But you can look this up for yourself, okay? Now, once you start working with like these archetypes inside of you, you're really exploring your conscious. That's how you know you're really exploring your consciousness, because the unconscious is rearing its ugly head, or its pretty head, and you're working with it. But one way you know is that when, for instance, when I'm too afraid I'm going to sound crazy, but when I started speaking with the lover archetype, I could see everything that I did in one conversation that I had with it. So I let it speak to me, like Robert Moore talks about, and I spoke back to it. And then I had discussions with it about things that I had been through or decisions that I'd made in my life. And it's not like I'm speaking to the lover archetype as I have to listen and do everything it says. It has a shadow side, and that shadow side is in you. For instance, I give you one example about that. So a lot of musicians are filled with the lover archetype, and you can feel it when you hear their music. There's a shadow side to it, definitely. I think what Robert Moore speaks about with the Rolling Stones, like that song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. But what does he say after that? What are the lyrics after that? But I try, and I try, and I try. That's the point. That's the shadowy side of the lover archetype. It keeps digging and longing to feel a void that's not really ever going to be filled. And when it gets too shadowy, it starts to destroy things around it, trying to fill that void. And this is how we get addicted to drugs, why we overeat, why I overeat, why we do all these different things, because it's the shadowy side of the lover archetype that we're dealing with. Now, I'm not saying this is scientific fact. This is all theory based on Jung and Robert Moore's work. But I can tell you this has opened my eyes to things that pretty close to the same thing that DMT would. And I know that's saying a lot. That's saying quite a bit, actually, to put it like that. But the deeper why is to really transform and heal, we have to allow the unconscious to come out. We're not going to heal anything by simply just talking about it. Why? Here's another thing for you. The intellectual stimulation, the needing to know everything, to find the formula of how everything works, and talking about the formula of how everything works. Guess what archetype that is? That's the magician. So the dark side of the magician archetype is trying to intellectualize it to death. You see? And you can start to see how all of the 4 sides of this pyramid come together. The archetype that gives us boundaries is the warrior. The archetype that, and see, this is what you start doing in your mind. You're like, oh, these archetypes have all of these light characteristics and these shadow characteristics. And they directly oppose each other, like in a pyramid. So if you need, let's say the lover's going out of control, you might need the king to step in. And eventually what they start doing is they start balancing each other out, and you balance that pyramid, that potential that's inside of you. And all of these, depending on how deep you work with it, all of these archetypes are a part of you, and they're a part of the collective, but specifically the ones that are going to show up in your imagination are the ones that are directly connected to your energy for the most part. But it does come from the collective too. So, but why bother, right? That sounds like a lot of work. Well, that's why it's called the work. But I think it's fun, like that we could do it this way. It's a hell of a lot better than someone saying, well, you're impulsive, you overeat, take Ozempic. Oh, you have anxiety, take Xanax. I've done all this stuff, by the way. You can't get enough done, you don't have enough fire in you, take some Adderall, you know. Or maybe eat some ice cream or something, right? And all you're doing is just like any other drug, is you're just letting the symptom go away, and you're never doing the work to heal it. Right. Okay. So that's why I think you should bother. But Jung said that the unconscious isn't junk. There are books that you'll read where they talk about the unconscious being like, oh, it's just junk inside of you. Like it's just junk in your head or whatever. But it's not junk. It's actually gold. And we'll get into the alchemy side of this, but active imagination digs it up. So you can find the gold in the junk. I dare any of you to try this. Like, take a week and try this, and you will see the shadowy side of all these archetypes, you know. But it is not the same as, because I was speaking to a buddy about this, and he goes, isn't that like multiple personalities? No, it's not. Multiple personalities is when you actually split a part of yourself into a whole other personality to deal with situations that your whole self can't deal with, right? But he thought we're split. Ego up top, chaos below, right? And this kind of bridges them, like the snarling dog behind the locked door. Bridges them, okay? Or maybe it's my stress barking, but either way, like, you have to face it and you have to grow. So let me see if that's JM right there. I think it is. Hopefully. Either way, I think this is important, and I wanted to talk to JM about it. Is this JM on the phone? Hopefully.
Oh, it's Craig.
Oh, what's up, Craig? Go ahead and say what you need to say, brother.
Oh, fuck. I love, excuse my language, sorry. But I love the discussion, dude. And just what you're getting at, like alchemic gold. Before you can get towards anything like that, you truly need to know your own heart, and not for its deceptions, but for its truth, you know?
Yeah.
And find humility, like a deep, honest humility in it. You know, like the other day, somebody in traffic or whatever, they cut me off or something, right? And I'm angry at them, so I do something towards them. And I'm perceiving them as an asshole. But what have I just become by treating them in light?
Right.
Right? So it's just finding like a lower spot or forgiveness, not for them, but also for yourself, for being such a high, haughty, you know, like the humble shall inherit the earth, right? The Torah is written upon your heart.
Right.
And the only way to truly do that is to find humility in our haughtiness. And then when you do that, you can realize the antithesis to your actions, where I see an asshole, I treat them like an asshole, and I become one. Shit, you know?
Have you used active imagination yourself?
Well, yeah. Well, like my path myself, it was just through my triggers, right? So you say shadow work, but the only shadow that matters is the real-time shadows that we encounter in our day-to-day life, right? Where we judge others or we treat them poorly, you know, or we blame, deceive. Like, it's like you were just saying about like Ozempic, right? Like, some people will prefer denial and some people will prefer like overaction. But like the truth of the matter is, if I look in the mirror and I don't like what I see, I want to look at it. And in looking at it, what I don't want to see is my motivation to change it, right? And without actually taking action day to day and overcoming your own error, you're never going to truly overcome it. You're only going to find these ups and downs, which isn't like harmony or homogeny, right?
Yeah.
And then once you can find this place, because it becomes addictive, like you said, just the humility and the calmness of your reality, seeing the circus go on around you. But once you find that humility in that place in your heart where, like, accepting pain, say, like my daughter moving away, and I could barely look in her room without breaking down to like an ugly cry. You know what I mean? Like an ugly cry, like uncontrollable cry. Where eventually I just accepted that I had pain. So what I did is I faced it. So I grabbed her teddy bear, and I laid in her room, and I let it hit me. And I didn't judge it. I questioned it. Right? So I just let it hit me, and I didn't judge it. And at the bottom, I just realized, like, it's just love. And the only difference between love and pain is the conditioned mind thinking that reality isn't finite, which it is, right? So like my thought wasn't in alignment with reality, therefore I was suffering, right?
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it's these little simple truths that bring you into alignment with reality. And then once you can find that balance in your own heart, to find that alchemical gold, or to utilize that is to take that trash, like you were saying, and that is the goal. It's just we've treated it like trash. So you take something like lust, like sexual energy, right? And instead of destroying it all the time and turning it into trash, you can see it for what it is and how it makes your muscles stronger and makes you more lively and puts a pop in your step. And you can start doing some stretches and treating yourself the right way, thinking the right way, and purifying your own natural essence in order to reach that alchemical goal. So you reach that heavenly place of homogeny and balance with reality, where you are in homeostasis with reality itself. So like you're walking down a hallway and you almost feel like you're bursting at the seams with good energy. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing you can control, and it's nothing you seek. It's a natural reaction to how you set your table, right?
Sure.
To how you, yes. And then, so like you'll like, shit, I forgot my key or something, right? Like something that would normally upset you in life, and you realize, wait, like, where am I supposed to go now? Like roadblocks in life they will no longer represent roadblocks, but a redirection into something else. Like, who am I going to have a conversation with now? So you go find your key, and you bump into somebody, and you're having like a teardropping conversation that might just change the way they perceive something. You know what I mean? Right
on. That's a good call, man. I appreciate you saying that. We're going to take a break, and then I'm going to get JM Debord on here, but I hear you, man. And that's what I want to talk about tonight is how do we heal this stuff practically, right? We can think about it in our minds till the cows come home, but how do we actually do the work and heal it so that it's gone and that we grow from it? And that is
your day-to-day
the big question. So, all right, man, I'm going to take a break. Thanks for your call, Craig.
Love it, Joe.
Appreciate it, brother. All right, so when we come back, we're going to have JM Debord on. But I just want you guys to think about, like, just look into active imagination, right? And we'll continue this discussion with JM. We'll get more into the dream world and how this stuff kind of works when we come back from the break. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
I didn't want to know. I just didn't want to know. Best to keep things in the shallow end, 'cause I never quite learned how to swim. I just didn't want to know. I didn't want. Close my eyes just to look at you, taken by the seamless vision. And I close my eyes, ignore the smoke, ignore the smoke, ignore the smoke. Such a lovely California. I don't wanna know. I just didn't want to know. Mistook the nods for an approval. Just ignore the smoke and smile. Crawling after my sheets, turning blue, such a lovely color for you. Crawling after my sheets, turning blue, such a perfect color for your eyes. Crawling after my sheets, turning blue, such a lovely color for you. Crawling after my sheets, turning blue, while I just sit and stare at you. Because I don't wanna know.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. I really appreciate you guys' patience, and I have JM Debord here with us. And we used to have monthly discussions about this. So if you're new and you don't know who JM Debord is, he's a best-selling author of The Dream Interpretation Dictionary, a community leader since 2013, and there's your applause, JM. Since 2013 at Reddit's Our Dreams, the world's largest site for dreaming sharing, where he's known as Rat Owl, creator of Dreams 123, the process of dream interpretation, and the Owl School of Dreaming, and also the co-host of the Dreams That Shape Us podcast. And based on what you told me last time, there's a whole lot of other stuff that you're involved in. So thanks, man, for coming on the show officially. I appreciate it, brother.
And it's my pleasure to be back. We've had all those great conversations in the past, and we always find interesting rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah, so I was speaking to the art of healing, really practically healing, because you hear this stuff all the time about, well, you have this trauma, you have this, you have, everybody's got something, or they're categorized some way, but then they say you just need to process it or you need to heal it. And then my question was, before all this started, well, how do we really heal it? Because I've intellectualized this stuff until the cows come home, right? How do I actually heal it? And that's where I got into looking deeper into active imagination and came up with or found Robert Moore's work. And then I thought about, you talk about this too in your book, one of the books that I have, which is Nightmares, Your Guide to Interpreting Your Darkest Dreams. And those things kind of give us a clue as to what we need to deal with too, right?
Oh, yeah, man. Nightmares are a big flashing sign that says something needs to be fixed. Something's not right. And it could be in you. It could be in your life. It could be in something that you ate last night. You have the random sorts of nightmares, but the ones that keep coming back, that usually means there's something at the heart of it that's needs to be healed. And there are, I love dream interpretation as a way of getting into that, because for one, from the dream content, it can give you an idea of what that dysfunction is, or where that pain is, what needs to be fixed or changed. And for two is that you can get into something like, it's building a relationship with the part of you where this stuff is inside. Like, it's often stored subconsciously, especially if you've experienced trauma, and it's somewhere in your nervous system, and you need to find it and release it. And you can do that with these different methods of dream work. There's one known as embodied dream work, where you let your body express it for you in a way. Like you're connected in the into the dream, but you're really, through the imagery, you're connected into the part of your mind that created or manifested the dream in the first place. And it's also the part of your mind where you know where you're hurt. And it also can have a good idea of what to do to fix it or help it. So Dreamwork is one of my favorite ways of affecting this kind of change in you, the healing work. I've been in another path lately known as network spinal analysis. It's through chiropractic care. And what they do is they teach your nervous system how to let go of the tension that is distorting your spine and causing the pain in your nervous system, like literal pain that you can be having, as opposed to like an existential pain or an emotional pain. But it's all somatic in the end. It's all expressed through your body. I have found that I don't have to think my way through it. I don't have to do anything other than some of the exercises that they've taught me to do. There's some breathing exercises. And I also listen to alpha binaural beats frequency. I was just doing that before we went on the air tonight. I haven't had a chance to do it today. And I found out something about this from the Monroe Institute's research, is that the alpha brain frequencies are the bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious. If you think of the unconscious as the body, the nervous system, the place where you've stored your hurt, the place where the memories of that hurt or that pain, that wounding, that trauma, where it's stored, then the alpha frequencies act as a bridge to get you into these, call them subconscious parts of you, where you can actually affect the healing. You know, I went through various kinds of, we'll just call it talk therapy. You know, you go to see a counselor, or you see a therapist, you know, whatever. And it did a lot of good. And we, you know, and one of them in particular, the guy who taught me how to do dream work, I mean, that was just a lifesaver for me. But I found that I could talk my way around these things and talk, but it's still like, it wasn't really affecting a deeper change in me.
That's exactly,
it wasn't changing me from the ground up.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just saying too. Yeah.
Network spinal, then, for anybody who's interested in this, it requires special training through chiropractors. And usually you can use the name of your town, city, maybe, and the name Network Spinal or Network Spinal Chiropractic. It was originally known as Network Spinal Analysis. They teach your nervous system how to heal itself. And it's through gentle touch. So when I say chiropractic, people usually think of the old snap and crack, you know, crack your back. You know, my grandfather was a chiropractor, so I know this, you know, I know that modality well. But this network spinal was created by a chiropractor, and the training is given to chiropractors because they're doctors of the spine. And what it does is it opens up what they call gateways up the spine. There's 7 of them, and they go from the tailbone to the neck. And as you're ready, the doctor can activate these gateways so that the energy, the literal nerve impulses, the energy, the electrical signals that your body is communicating with itself with, can flow more readily through those areas of the spine where they've been blocked. And when you have various kinds of conditions, diseases, symptoms, things like that, it usually boils down to something in your body that's not able to communicate. It's gotten out of harmony with the rest of the body. So the network spinal teaches your body how to reconnect with itself and then to connect with your brain. And I found a lot of parallels, dude, with other modalities, you know, Kundalini for one. When the energy starts moving through your body, when your spine gets back into this more harmonious state, you'll start feeling these waves going through your body it's unconscious, and it's moves sort of serpentine, you know, a little snake-like. You can feel it kind of roll up your body, up your spine. Sure. Your whole body can get involved in it, and you're not doing anything to make it happen. You know, I can kind of trigger it now because I recognize what my body's doing, and sometimes I'll want to feel that rippling wave go through my spine. But it's oftentimes it happens by itself. And what my doctor tells me is that it's my skeletal system, the whole nervous system is reordering itself at a higher level of integration, which means without the past pains and traumas. I mean, to me, it's true healing because it's remaking you from the ground up in your nervous system.
Interesting. I'll have to look into that.
It's hard. And most people haven't. I was on a ladies, get this, dude. I was on this lady's radio show. She was in like North Carolina. She was a chiropractor, but she also had this show, and she had me on because of the books I've written about dreams. It's a subject that she was also interested in. And one day, like I think it was after the show, we were sitting there talking on the phone, and she said, I'm kind of an intuitive channeler. Do you mind if I just sort of tune in and see what's going on with your body? Because I was experiencing some back pain, and I'd had the same back pain.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. Yeah.
I went through a lot of care for that. Yeah. And she said, you should look into the network spinal analysis. And I'm like, what? And she just tried to drop that seed. And it was, okay, so at the time, it registered, but it just kind of got archived. I was locked into seeing a certain chiropractor who was doing things a certain way. And one day, a few years later, I found myself back in the chiropractor's office dealing with the same problem. And I'm laying there on the table and I'm getting the same treatment. And I thought to myself, man, there's got to be a different way, because this means for the rest of my life, I'm going to be dealing with this. I mean, foreseeably. And I thought, what was it that one lady chiropractor told me, that radio host? And I'm racking my brain. I'm like, network something? Okay, network spine. So I just I'm in Tucson, Arizona. So I go on the search engine. I'm like, okay, Tucson, network, spinal. And there's a result that pops up, one of the first 2 or 3. And the doctor's office is about 2 miles from my house. There are 2 practitioners in Tucson, and there's about 1 million people here. So it kind of gives you an idea. If you're in Colorado, they're everywhere because that's where they train these people. But, you look up like Seattle, you'll find maybe 3 or 4 of them practicing in that whole metropolitan area. So it's not the easiest to find. But if you can, I'm so glad that lady told me that, because she said that I was locked into a way of understanding my body and healing and pain and symptoms and all that. She said I was locked into this mechanistic model of understanding it. She's like, there's a deeper level to this. You need to get to the patterning that's causing it in the first place. I didn't understand any of this really at the time. I kind of had an idea, and she's throwing all this stuff at me. Well, I ended up down at that new chiropractor's office, and about 2 or 3 sessions in, and I'm still not sure about this, I was out working in my yard. I threw out my back. Dude, I was shaped like a letter S. My spine was so contorted. And I'm like, all right, if she can fix this with her little gentle touch stuff, with me being like the old school chiropractor guy. Yeah, get you on there and twist you up like a pretzel, hear all those joints pop and things crack back into place and stuff, and she did it. And nice. It took 3 or 4 sessions, but I walked out, and I remember walking out of there going, my body, she triggered my body to figure out how to fix itself instead of having to mechanically pop that thing back into place. I was like,
That's
what
cool.
else can this do? What else can it do? And yeah, man, it does. It works healing at a deeper level. So I'm glad we had a chance to say that, because I'm a real fan of this now. And I'm teaching something that's related to it called somato-respiratory integration, SRI. And it goes along with the chiropractic care, but you can do the SRI on your own. And you just start at stage 1 and you learn the simple exercises. And that one is basically breathing with your hands, like over your diaphragm or over your heart or over your belly button. And as you breathe, what you're imagining is that you're going from your spine through your body to your hands as you breathe in, and then you go through your hands, through your body to your spine as you breathe out. And what you're doing is telling your brain to connect with that part of your body. I find oftentimes that things that are painful, especially when it's just sort of like an ache, it's just a part of my body that my brain is disconnected from. And if I can sit there and go into the ache or the pain and just like be hyper aware of it, like just without judgment, without being like, oh God, this is my part of my bad back is acting up again. And I hate this, man. This sucks. I'm in pain all the time. It's like, no, without that, just be there with it. Just sit with the pain. Sit with what you're feeling.
Yeah, most people don't
good or bad.
won't do that. They'll run straight for comfort as soon as that happens.
Yes. Whatever pill they got to pop to make that pain go away, you know? And yeah, I found that these exercises it starts with that. It creates a connection with the body. And then you can get to like stage 2, or it might be stage 3, where you put one hand on your heart and then you put one hand down by your belly and you breathe in the one area. And then as you breathe out, it's like ripples going across the water down to the other hand. And you breathe that in down there. Exhale, you feel the ripples come up to the previous hand. So it's just basically it's passing energy back and forth. But it's energy that follows with your awareness, because attention goes, or energy goes or flows where attention goes.
Right.
So as you give that attention to these parts of your body, you're actually sending energy there. And it's also, I mean, you increase blood flow, you increase warmth. I mean, so there's physically measurable things that are going on. But when I say energy, it's that same energy when they say, you know, well, what do they mean that energy flows where attention goes? What kind of energy are we talking about here? Can I hook up a voltmeter and measure it? You know, like, it's like, well, no, it's a different kind of energy, but it seems to be like an underlying energy that the rest of the body is built around. It's like a scaffolding. And I think that it's the energy that builds our bodies from, you know, atoms on up. It tells it all how to organize.
That's pretty cool.
You ever heard of Robert Temple?
No, never heard of Robert. Never heard of Robert Temple. I'm fascinated with physical healing in that sense. I do have some kind of exercises that we do that kind of correlate. The way you're describing the breathing and the visualization and using your hands and stuff. I mean, I understand that for sure. But I kind of wanted to speak mainly about, like, you know, the process of healing things that are in your unconscious. Now, I know pain, like physical pain, can be a big part of that, right? Like, but specifically like traumas and things that are buried in there, or things that we keep not like we really need to heal, okay? Whether it's emotionally, physically, but mainly things that are like patterns that keep showing up for us over and over and over again. And
yeah, I get it.
Yeah, what I've found is that like the active imagination thing, and this is why it made me think of you, is because of the dream work, specifically with conscious exploration, that it had to do, like, it's cool to explore consciousness, it's fun and exciting and stimulating, but where the hell does the healing come in, right? And so this active imagination thing kind of helped me, especially working with archetypes, right? Like, it's really starting to help me, and it made me think about, like I said before, your book about facing the nightmares, so to speak. So so what do you tell your students or any of the people that read your work? It's like, well, these things keep coming up in my nightmares. Do they ever ask you, well, how do I get rid of it? What do I do to make it go away? You know?
Yeah. One of the most popular questions at Reddit when people have nightmares, you know, and they couldn't just Google and find the answer, as they come to Reddit, to Our Dreams, where I'm, you know, been rat owl for ages. And their question is, well, you know, this thing's bothering me. How can I make it go away? And I'm like, well, do you really want to make it go away? Because the reason why you're having nightmares about it in the first place is because it's probably not getting your attention in the way that it needs your attention. Mm. It's a representative of something about you that needs to be it needs to be brought home. It's been alienated, and it's floating around in your psyche, and it's supposed to be a conscious part of your personality. But for whatever reason, it's not, which is often what happens with trauma, is it splinters off some piece of you that then is not working with the rest of the system. And the longer it goes out there on its own, the more desperate that it gets, the more that it, imagine the family dog who's left out while everybody else is inside having warmth and light and fun, and the dog is sitting there on a leash out there in the cold, and everybody forgot about him, and then they wonder why the dog isn't feeling so good the next time that they, give it a little attention. And it's kind of the same idea is that there can be parts of you that are like that dog that's been left out in the cold, and they want to come home, and they want to be reintegrated. So there's a book called Dreaming the Soul Back Home by Robert Moss, which uses these techniques like active imagination and such to make contact with the lost parts of yourself and then bring them home, because they will show up in your dreams.
What I found is it's hard, right? Like, do you think it's easier to do active dream work, imagination, or just because when I just do the regular active imagination stuff, there's this voice in the back of my head that's like trying to stop it. It's like, this is crazy. It's just your imagination. You're talking to yourself. It's not going to work, like this is that thing. Dude. Yeah. So do you think it's easier to work with dreams because we just dream naturally, or active imagination without the dreaming?
The course, I've taken 2 courses on it through a Jung platform, and I've I've got a background in different types, modalities that are similar, or I've read all about active imagination. I've practiced it myself. I've taken the courses on it, and also have a background with modalities like Gestalt, which is they're very similar. We would find an image from a dream as the starting point for our. I just call them AI from now on. I know that artificial intelligence. I know people associate AI with that, but among ourselves who talk about this kind of stuff with each other, we just say AI meaning active imagination. So if I say that at some point, I want everyone to know I'm referring to that. I'm referring to this technique that was developed by Carl Jung. We started with the dream imagery because I think that it gives you an easier target to focus on. Because what you're trying to find is what that image represents or connects with inside of you. You can think of, like, when I tap on an icon on my phone that starts an app, the icon is a graphical user interface.
That's a good analogy. I got you. Yeah.
We use the dream image as an idea. It is a user interface for your inner workings. So when you interact with the dream image, you're actually interacting with the parts of you that it connects to. And it can activate routines, processes, programs, in a sense, because our body has this sort of programming, like you were mentioning. Well, sometimes, you got these patterns in your life and they keep bringing you back to the same old places. Mm-hmm. How do you get to the part of yourself where those patterns are? Well, that's where AI really can help you, because you can interact with a dream character, or it can be an object. But usually with AI, at least at the beginning, you want to use something that's more interactive. And usually that's dream characters. So you find a character that made a strong impression on you, and then you bring them into the space where you are, that you create in the AI session. You got to create a space for yourself to be able to do this kind of inner work with the inner focus. When Jung would do it, he said, and this happened spontaneously, when he started happening to him, he said that he would just sort of drop down within himself, and what he would do is he would picture that he had this shovel in his hands, and he was just shoveling the dirt out, and he was going down, 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 down into the ground. And eventually he would pop into some place, it's like he goes deep, deep, deep down into himself, and then he pops into a place that's unconscious. he's still awake, although I would say he was probably in a hypnagogic state at that point.
Yeah.
So on that boundary, which I find is a lot easier to do, except you at least initially when you're learning how to do it, it's good to have like an alarm set for about maybe 15 or 20 minutes, or a timer. I say an alarm, but just something that'll kind of gently bring you out so that you don't either fall asleep there or wander off or kind of get lost in your own mind. So it helps to bring you back. And the dream character gives you something that you can have a little more focus on. But once you learn how to do it, then you can use symbols or objects. You were talking about archetypes before,
right.
And they usually come to us in dreams in some kind of character form. But I've learned how to see that archetypes can present themselves also in the form of settings, of symbols, even through actions and themes. Like, it's not an archetype isn't just sort of a symbol. An archetype is also a way that a story plays out. There are certain archetypal themes in stories. And when your dream has those kinds of archetypal themes in them, then you're swimming in some of those deeper waters. So you can have some dreams that are kind of in the shallow end. A lot of those have to do with like memory processing and kind of the grunt work.
Is it more powerful if it's a recurring dream? Would that be more of a thing to really?
I would recommend it. Yeah. It's the first place I go when I work with people with their dreams. I often look for the recurring content, especially when we first start our sessions. Like when we start doing this work, like the first initial sessions, I'll often ask about recurring dreams. It can you get a lot of information from recurring dreams that you may not get from an individual dream. And you can, so when I say archetypal themes, they are themes that repeat, but I don't necessarily mean a recurring theme in your dreams. It's a recurring theme in history. It's a recurring motif.
It's something that's in the collective for sure. It's
rescuing the princess from the dragon. Okay, this is a story as old as time itself. So if you have a theme like that, and it may not be a dragon in your dream. It's a 20-foot tall man-eating bear.
I'll tell you. This is the thing. The one recurring dream that I have a lot is. I'm in a gunfight, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but I'm in a gunfight, okay? And in the gunfight, I do great. Sometimes I'm backed up. I'm always like in my room, or sometimes I'm in my grandmother's house in a room that I don't remember, but I'm in a gunfight, and I'm destroying everybody that's coming at me except for the last damn guy. And when the last guy gets there, he always gets me, right? It's like either run out of bullets or I end up in a squabble with it or my gun jams, and it's never, it's kind of like you're playing a video game. You're just taking the zombies out that come towards you till the last guy. Then there's always something, you know what I mean? That's like, damn it. Right. And it's gotten to where I know when he's coming because I can start feeling it, even like in my body, in the dream. It's like, okay, well, here comes the boss. Do I got enough bullets? Yeah, I got enough bullets this time, and each time it's something like either that just happens that I end up losing this fight with the boss, so to speak, in the thing. And I've picked this apart till the cows come home, but.
You need to do some gestalt with him. It would be my recommendation. Gestalt is a therapeutic, it's a German word that means whole or complete. And in Gestalt psychology, what they're doing is they're looking at the whole person. And then the goal of therapy is to connect you with to connect the healthy parts of yourself with the parts that are unhealthy. And the unhealthy parts will often be like that guy, that boss character at the end. It's like, well, this is the thing about myself that I can't beat. And so what you would do is use Gestalt, where you you create that space within yourself that you can go into for inner focus and inner work. And then you bring that character to mind, especially if you have a recent dream. You can walk right into those memories and really start reliving them. And then you come up to that character and you start a dialogue with them. And if things proceed the way that they often do, is that at some point you'll start getting information from them. They oftentimes, these characters, it has to be remembered that they're autonomous. They're in your mind, but they are autonomous from your ego. They're part of the larger system called the psyche. So you have to remember that they don't have to answer you. And if you come at them with your usual way of doing things that's causing problems to begin with, then you're not going to get anywhere with them. Like,
so you think I should have a conversation with the boss?
Yeah, it's having a conversation with him and get him to tell you what it is that you're missing. Why do I always get to the end of the story and, I run out of bullets or my gun jams or, and his answer initially might be something like, well, haven't you figured it out yet for yourself, you idiot? But then if you engage with that kind of character in a wholehearted, like, this can't be a mental or an intellectual exercise. This has to be engagement with your whole body, but especially with your heart, with your mind, with your gut. That everything needs to engage with this character and be very upfront. And remember that it knows more about you than you know about yourself, because being part of the unconscious mind, it doesn't have any blind spots and it doesn't have any ego turf.
Right.
And it's been sitting there in the background observing you. And there's a reason why you get to the end of those dreams every time. And that one character is still like, he's like, you're not going to take me down that easily. And so let me give you an example from there's sort of the healing work that I've been doing. Is sometimes I'll be there in a session, we call it an entrainment, and I'll be there on the chiropractic table, and I'm going within myself. And I'll find sometimes that there are some of these places, spots, hurts, discomfort, tension, tightness. It won't go away simply by connecting with it. It wants a deeper level of engagement. And it's coming, what I've recognized now is that this is what Jung called the shadow. The shadow was often misunderstood. People think that it's innately bad. Well, Jung never said that about shadow. He said that it's something that could be conscious, but it isn't. Shadow is everything about you that could be conscious, but it isn't. And it often begins with things that the ego doesn't like about itself. And as you're developing, you have these things that you recognize that are potential within you, or like, think of the kid who's, starts getting to be a teenager and he needs to toughen up, because he's hanging out with his buddies, and being that gentle little kid like he used to be just doesn't work anymore. It works the same way with girls too. Now what happens to you when you toughen up is you make those other parts of yourself go away. You make them go under. You'll dream about drowning things or seeing things drown, because what that means is that it's going unconscious. Well, once it's unconscious, it's no longer part of the ego. It's no longer under that umbrella. And now it can exist in the psyche autonomously of you. Now, there's a lot about you that exists autonomously in your psyche naturally. It's just the way that it's constructed. Your ego part of your mind is maybe 1 to 5% of your total mind. And this is a mind-blowing fact, but it's been well established in neuroscience. So what you're looking at is a system, the psyche, where you have all these autonomous, independent parts that some of it is meant to be that way, and some of it is simply because you haven't claimed it or you've refused it. You've pushed it out. And now it's waiting for you to reclaim it. So what I found is that these characters like that one, the boss character at the end of your dream, it's often the part of yourself that says, no, we're going to reckon with this. We're not going to just gloss it over. This is something that you have to know down to your core, and you have to embrace it. down to your core, and you've got to go through the process of hearing it out. So that's where Gestalt comes in, is you come up to that character, that boss character, when you find him in the Gestalt space, and you say, dude,
What's
I
your
really
deal?
need to know what's going on. What's your deal? Yeah.
I've said that to him before.
Yeah,
What's
hopefully
your deal?
they start talking to you.
But I think I need to word it different. There's some people in the chat saying, just eat mushrooms. It seems like that to me, that's like, you need to lose weight, just take Ozempic. Well,
help.
it'll work, but it's, yeah, psychedelics have their own uses for sure. But the last time, and I have this in my dream journal, the fourth time I had this dream, I was behind my father's bed. It's never in my room too either, man. It's always like somebody else's room. That has to mean something, right?
Yeah,
it's
you
like
said
I'm
your
trying to,
grandma's house.
yeah, like I'm
Yeah,
trying to
okay.
protect. I'm trying to protect the family. I feel
Yeah.
that way. But this time I was on the floor with it, and I had him in a headlock, and he had me in a headlock. Right, my gun's out of ammo. I don't think his was, because I went dark, and I'm like, oh, he killed me again. But I remember saying to him, like, dude, what is, like, I don't think I said, what's your deal? I was like, what is the problem, man? Like, what's your major malfunction or something like that? That's what I said to him, And it's like the dude just looked at me and
what is your major malfunction?
right, like he just looked at me and turned his head, kind of grinned, and killed me. And I'm like, oh, come on, man, And I know. I mean, I was even kind of lucid at that point, or like I knew I've been here before. Oh yeah, okay. But the major program was like, I got to take this thing out. I got to beat it. I got to not let him get me.
Yep.
And because if he gets me, then he's going to get everybody else that I care about. Like once I'm dead, then I have no control over what he does to everybody else. You know what I mean?
All right. So notice that this is how you react automatically when he comes into the scene. There's this whole thought process. There's this whole group of thoughts and feelings that come with it. So this is telling you where to look in yourself for where the origins of this character or the origin of this character is within you. You're looking for something that also involves that same sort of idea of when A happens, I react with B, and it usually leads to C. All right, so A happens, something feels like it's threatening. It's somehow related to my family.
Yeah.
B, what happens? I load up my bullets and I go to war. Okay, that's part of something I do automatically in the dream. So it's telling me that this is a pattern. This is an assumption. This is something that goes unquestioned. That is where you start. Why are you reacting to that stimulus? You have other options, but you're not taking them. In the dream, you don't even consider them. So this is the place where you start, is what other options did I have at point B? Or if we want to say, okay, point A is the stimulus, point B is the reaction. So yeah, point B. And why, when I do the automatic reaction, does it lead to point C? So let me give you an example to think about of the kind of situation that a dream like this could be, pointing out to you. What is underneath it? What's behind it? So I'll give an example from my life. My father was a brilliant musician, but kind of a fuck up in his life. He drank a lot. A lot of his friends were people who, some of them were really good, genuine friends, and there were some people around who I felt like they, growing up, and you look at these are my dad's friends. And it was like, I don't think that they respected him. In fact, I know that they didn't respect him. And there created this thing in me where I would defend my father at all costs because I knew the man that he really was. But that also meant a sort of codependency because there was a reason why people talked about my father that way. And there were times when he perhaps deserved some of it, drinking too much, carrying on, acting like a fool, So what would happen is then if, let's say, A, the stimulus, is the subject of my father is brought up in a way that B feels like I need to defend him, means that I'm going to start wrestling with whatever it is that feels like it's put us under attack. So that assumption about my father, that I have to defend my father, is really what has to happen. I have to become aware of that assumption before I get to be, because be means I'm reacting through patterning, conditioning, behavior. Yes, I'm going to defend my father. So, but why? Well, maybe in the end, and this is what I found out, and it took me a long fucking time to figure it out, was because I'm really defending what I see about him in me. So
gotcha.
When I wrestle with it, so that becomes C, where the bad guy always finds a way of thwarting you. What that means, he is a representation of the part of you that keeps looping you back to point A, because you're not thinking about your reactions at point B before they happen. You just keep going straight through, doing it the same way and going to C. When these characters come at you that way, they're needing you to see something. It's
And
also something that other people can probably see about you.
Gotcha. Here's the hard thing, though. This is why I like active imagination so much, is because it's not just lucidity or a dream. Sometimes it takes me a while in a dream to even know that I'm dreaming, man. But on the other hand, the dream will see active imagination. You have to really practice it to uproot these things, right? Really get involved with it. And it takes a lot of practice, but it's really cool. So that has its advantages, but it takes longer to get to I guess maybe it's harder. I don't know. But the dream itself, these things come up immediately, but then a lot of times you're not participating because you're not aware you're dreaming. So it's always like this catch-22. I've got active imagination where I participate, and then I have to really kind of become very crafty and artistic at learning how to do this to bring these things up. Or B, I go into a dream, and these things immediately come up, and they are represented in the dream, but I'm not even aware I'm dreaming. Sometimes I don't remember them. You see what I mean? So it's like we got to blend the two somehow. And this is what I was talking about, lucid dreaming, but most people that I know lucid dream, they're like, they're taking that time to have a lot of fun, because then now they're in control of everything,
Sure. And it's great entertainment, and you get a chance to
right.
experience, like in a virtual reality. I was going to suggest C. Your option C is to use the alpha and theta binaural beats. Get something from a company called Sacred Acoustics called Whole States. It's on their website. And so Sacred Acoustics. And you find the Whole States alpha frequencies. They sell it as a package. I think it's like $20. And you can listen to these frequencies. And what it's doing is it's using the binaural beats to create hemispheric synchronization, but then it has some deeper stuff that it's also doing. But basically, by getting yourself into an alpha state, you're opening up the bridge between your conscious mind. When you can be sitting there in AI, you have the conscious part of you that's trying to go down into the subconscious parts of you. It's trying to go down into the psyche. And if you have those binaural beats going, it might help you to get there faster.
Sure, yeah. I've created my own beats.
Right state of mind.
I've used Monroe stuff. I've listened to a lot of different binaural beats, and you're right. They do help you stay more focused and become more aware, right? They actually do. They help you keep your mind awake while your body falls asleep. It's tremendous how much they help.
And you can get to that place you are on the mushrooms. You can get to that place without needing the mushrooms. It's a different experience, but it can be clearer in a way if you can do it without needing the extra help. Now, I'm a fan of getting that extra help sometimes.
Me too, bro. I don't want to have to take, it's no offense to anybody, but that's all I've done my entire life is I got this problem. What can I ingest to get rid of it. You know, what can I just immediately just get it rid of? And like, I don't want to do, I want to actually heal it, because I've healed things with mushrooms, with taking large doses and small doses like spores, you know, and then like it heals depression. It's really good for that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I'm still going through these cycles, right? Like, and I remember one time I'm like, yeah, I'm healed, I don't do that anymore. But then later I end up doing it again. So this is how like deep this stuff is, man. It's really deep. And my only next step in the psychedelic world would be, well, I've done DMT, I've done mushrooms. So what's next? Do I do iboga? And iboga is terrifying. I've heard some people's experiences with that. Like they say it rewires your whole brain. Okay, well, right now I can't take a trip to some other country and take iboga. Like, so.
Yeah.
I would. It's just like push-ups, man. I could inject testosterone into my pecs and get massive pecs. Or I can do the work over time and then let it naturally be that way for the rest of my life, you know?
Well, guess what's going to last longer? You know, I've seen the guys who took the shortcut, and what happens to them as soon as they get off that stuff, or they lose their desire to lift weights, and all that muscle turns into slop, man. So trust me, building it up naturally. You know, this is the same kind of idea when you're working with the psyche and you're trying to get into the unconscious.
Yeah.
Using techniques like AI and Gestalt will get you into that place, and it's usually a slower process, but you're ready for it when you get there, and the changes that it affects become more lasting or permanent. Whereas, you know, I've had those mushroom trips and I had the revelations and all that. And honestly, I had a mushroom trip that changed me for all of, I mean, there was probably a good year that was a very strong, like,
it'll do that
there in my life. It was like, because it told me, you know, this is the first thing it told me, is it told me, go get that fucking half pound of weed that's in your apartment and get rid of that shit, because this is taking up too much of your time and you're always afraid that the cops are going to get you. You know, I was a much younger man at the time, but you know, I mean, I was, you know, I was slinging the dope, and I thought I was, you know, the man. And that's the first thing that the mushroom did. And it did. It got me out of that game. But there came a point when the behavior that was behind it didn't really change something about me. You know, like, well, where was that behavior coming from in the first place? Well, you know, because you grew up around people who, you know, the guys, the musicians, we lived in LA in the early 70s, dude, you know, and they're running around with all those guys, you know, freaking Eagles and stuff like that. I mean, they weren't like besties or anything, but they all knew each other because they were playing the LA scene. Well, you know, when you're a musician who's making $100 a week, how are you going to supplement your income? You know, all right, so what do you do, and 4-year-old kid, you know, that's me, who's seeing that, you know, the guy who was the one slinging the weed was the one who also had the most respect among the men. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's right. And your father was the guy who wasn't respected by those men. So what are you doing by proving something? You know, it's like, oh, that behavior was driven by something that started in me when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
If you don't find that, then you won't heal it. You won't understand where the pattern comes from, and you won't heal it.
Well, this is where like active imagination has helped me. I think the dreams are going to help me really, like what you're talking about with the Gestalt thing. But the active imagination with that lover archetype, when I was doing like Robert Moore's work, showed me that that's all I've been doing. Like when things get intense, it's almost like I feel like I'm drowning and I just need satisfaction. That's what the lover is. It just keeps trying to feed the dark side of it. It loves beautiful things, feeling good, being happy, all the deep emotions, and it's just trying to feel that thing all the time, right? And that's the shadow side of that archetype. It's just trying to, and I'm like, okay, well, I had to visit these other archetypes, so these other parts of myself, to realize, oh, there are times in our life, especially as a man, where we're supposed to be able to handle these intense feelings, not just try to relieve them all the time, but we have to bask in these feelings sometimes, you know, because it's what we need to do. Not all the time.
Or shut them.
Yeah.
Or shut them down for a while until you can deal with them because you got work to do.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
Like, you got a kingdom to run here, because if you remember Moore's work, it's the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And the king and the lover are, and this is king or queen. I want to make sure we're representing both sides. You know,
sure, yeah.
They stand.
What
equally.
I meant intensity, not basking. You know, like things can get intense, and when things get intense, whether it's good or bad, we just want relief, right?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
And that's where I do, and that's where the alignment with the complementary archetype comes into play. Because the lover is in a dynamic relationship with its primary counterpart archetype. This is if you look at it on a graph, it would be like those two are right across from each other. And if you think of it as like a square, you've got the magician and the warrior archetype. They work complementary, and the monarch or king queen archetype and the lover. Because what happens is that the king is the one, or the queen, who sets the limits. That says, okay, there's a time for drinking and revelry and, sex and feeling good and deeply immersing yourself in the emotion and the sensation. This is all well and good, but there's also time you've got to make sure your business is taken care of.
That's right.
You've got to make sure that you don't get lost in that place. One of the ways I used to do it when I first learned how this worked was I smoked a lot of weed, dude. And what I would do is I would say, okay, during the week, I cannot have any weed. I cannot have it in my house. I cannot have it on my person. I cannot. But when it comes around to Friday, then it's party time. Break out the guitars, roll a joint. Let's go have some fun. Because you've deserved it. Not that I've earned it or deserve it, but it's like now is the time I've created where I can enjoy the lover's space and not get lost in it.
Dude.
And not get caught where it's months, years, where you go into the lover's space and you never return.
I've done the same thing with the magician archetype.
That part of you.
Same thing.
How's that?
Well,
yeah,
the magician, the magician's what I'm speaking about is like what you just said, that four square of Robert Moore's work. So the magician is the guy that tries to find the deeper meanings to everything. So you're over intellectualizing things all the time. You need to find the answers all the time. Now the magician has every one of these archetypes have a good light side, that contributes to the balance of you, to the healing of you, but they also have like dark sides. So if you're lost in the esoteric of everything, you're not even living in the world sometimes. Or if you're like in the shadow side of the lover and you're trying to fill a relief void all the time because you just think things are so beautiful and you want to experience all of it, like you're not taking care of the world and you're not setting boundaries, like you're not the warriors over there sitting on the ground. So it's like this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like this.
I do. I don't think anyone else does, but unless they've read the books. But you're speaking my language here. I love Robert Moore's work.
Yeah.
This is the thing that I guess for listeners that to kind of get them up to speed is there is a full expression of an archetype, which you would call it like the lover in its fullness, or the magician in its fullness. But then there's a shadow side of it, and one is active and one's passive. And so like the shadow side of the magician is the know-it-all, or the dummy. You get people who, like, you ever have that person who, like they're actually secretly really smart, but everyone thinks they're stupid and they act that way too.
Yeah.
Like that is an archetypal shadow pattern. And it's a relationship with your own intelligence, because you've probably been told at some point and got wounded around the area of your intelligence. So you might act like an idiot or think that you're dumb, or call yourself that. But you can see in those people who they do that, but they secretly know that they're a hell of a lot smarter than that. than everyone thinks they are. And there's sort of an arrogance that breeds behind it too.
Like a passive arrogance.
So now, there's like this passive arrogance. Whereas you get the other side of the magician archetype, the active pole, and that's the know-it-all. That's the person who's constantly trying to prove to everyone that how smart they are, probably because something deep inside of them is driving them because they're afraid of being stupid.
They're afraid of being tricked. Or being the dummy.
Tricked.
Yeah.
Or being the one who doesn't make the grade, like the grade, like grade in school proves that how smart you are, but just kind of like the grade in anything that you're doing, it's like you've got to always prove yourself to be right or to be on top of it, to be able to pass the test, and it becomes this sort of know-it-all behavior that then it's a shadow behavior that also has its own shadow, because behind that shadowy know-it-all is someone who's actually trying to prove that they're not one of those,
they're not vulnerable, maybe, or they're not dumb,
or not vulnerable, because they're secret, because there's something about themselves that they secretly know to be true, and or think that it could be true. They fear it could be true. I've seen people do this with homeless people. They get to be so derogatory of them, or if, say, like fat people or something. And they'll be like, look at that fat person, look how disgusting they are. What they are, and I've heard people say that kind of crap, and I'm just like, Jesus, this is a human being. How could you think it's okay to talk about them that way? But what they're doing is they're speaking from their own place of fear. They're afraid that could be them one of these days. Not necessarily like overweight, but somebody who is seen as being, what are the ideas that come with being overweight? Oh, that person just isn't disciplined enough to eat right and exercise, or else they would be a normal size. Well, no, they got something else going on, but,
maybe it's
for our discussion.
Yeah.
We're just trying to understand the mentality of the person who looks at them and judges them. If it goes back to what Jung said, is that you are always, whatever you react to most strongly in another person is something that you secretly see in yourself.
How can that be? So I still trip up with that, man. I do. I still trip. I know it's true. I know it is. But how can, and it is it's hard to. So how does that work? Maybe that's what that dream thing is that you're talking about too, that last boss. But for me, it's like, when you point your finger and say, I could never do that. I would never do that. Okay, I get that, because you are capable of it, and the fact that they can do that scares you. The fact that you can do it scares you. So what about... You might be the person who's not disciplined, and, it's not so much that the person, it's a fear of gaining weight. To finish that example, it's that you fear that there's some weakness in you that could put yourself in the kind of position where that weakness then shows, because we presume that a person who's can't control their weight, that they're just weak, and it shows in their body because they're overweight, but it's this could be also just more of a psychological thing where you feel like you don't measure up. And so now you find people who you feel like don't measure up to be the target of how you really feel about yourself. That aggression, that shame, that bullying behavior, that always points back into, you're always reacting to what you see about yourself, and you won't deal with it. That was the other part of it that Jung said, is that these shadows that we project out onto the world are always the parts of ourselves that we won't reckon with. We won't deal with it. Sure, I get that.
Now, with that in mind, go back to your boss character. If it's something that you have to be reckoned with, it's something that's coming out of your shadow. It's something that you might be able to identify because you react to it when you see it in other people, and you probably react to it strongly and negatively, maybe judgmentally.
Well,
you might react to it as something that has to be wrestled and conquered.
Sure. I've always reacted to betrayal. Like when people betray me in a way that I know, and hear me out, right? Because this is my consciousness speaking, not my unconscious. My consciousness says, I have never and would never do that to you. Like, why would you do that to me? You know? And at that point, I feel a way about it that Carl Jung's talking about, because I can feel it in my body. I can feel the rage, the anger, and sometimes, depending on the scenario, it's some that I'm even thinking about now, the downright disgust I have for that person. But if I really think about it, like what you're saying is like, am I afraid that I could do that to somebody? Because I don't feel that. Or am I afraid that I live in a world where people can do that and I'm not safe?
Well, let's look at it this way. If it's somebody who's done something, let's take it a little further, because maybe with betrayal, you've grabbed the monkey by the tail. Mm-hmm. Because here's an idea for you to consider. Okay, a betrayal then becomes something that is unforgivable. Let's say, so as an example. Now, take that. Have you ever done anything that's unforgivable that somebody else would consider to be unforgivable?
Yes.
And is that the thing that then when you get into a position where someone has betrayed you, something that is unforgivable, now you're reacting to it from the place in you that realizes that you too have done something that's unforgivable, or that somebody considers to be that.
Yeah, for sure. But
so now that's triggering into shame, and it's triggering into really strongly negative, low vibration types of emotions.
So where I'm going with this is though,
that you can get caught in.
No, I got you. Well, so where I'm going with this is though, is like, I've done things to people that I don't know in my past that would be considered unforgivable, that I don't know. But to the people that I care about and love, the things that have been done to me, I could never see myself doing that. Now, I'm speaking from my consciousness, not my unconscious, okay? So it's easy to point your finger at me and go, right? Like, but I could never see myself doing that. And the more I think about it, and I read Jung, I'm not trying to contest Carl Jung. He's Carl Jung, right? But it's like, is that really what's going on? Because I still, it's almost like, let's take an extreme example. Let's get the spotlight off of me, right? Let's say someone that you love in your family turns around and murders someone else in their family. That's out there, okay? They murder somebody in your family that you love, and you're thinking, what? You lose it. You get filled with rage, or you low vibrationally beat their face in before they get locked up or something. This has happened. Does that mean that person is seeing a part of themselves that they don't like? Really? Well,
it's when he says the things you react to the most strongly. I think he's talking about it's like a snap reaction. You know, you're talking about a situation where you get triggered into something that is. I don't know if it necessarily applies to that. I can think of two cases that are similar to that. One was a homicide where a guy, a drunk driver, wrecked into this dude, and he killed, like, he had like two kids in the back, and he turned around, he saw that this drunk driver was just wasted and rear-ended him. He was right outside his house. He walked into his house. He grabbed this pistol, and he came out and he executed the dude. Right. Mm-hmm. So in a fit of rage, they still charged him with murder. Okay. Because it was, even though he was triggered into it by something that was horrendous, and he watched, cherished loved one die right there because of this idiot. Right. He still, right. So he did that. And another one that I saw, it was a guy who murdered 6 members of his family, and they were showing him in the detective room after he had confessed, and his mom walks into the room. Now, 6 members of his family, and this is his mom. And she looks at him, and she gets an explanation from him. She's like, what happened? And, he explains what happened. He murdered all the rest of them because they were witnesses, because he murdered his brother, and his brother was doing something to him that was, you know, just totally triggered him. And he picked up a gun and they had a gunfight right there in the living room. And then he realizes, oh, there's all these witnesses. So he went and he murdered them all. And these are blood relatives, right? So he's sitting there with his mom, and he gets the explanation. He's going off to prison for the rest of his life. And she hugged him and she forgave him. And she told him that she loved him.
Wow.
It was one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen, because this was the footage of the cameras that were in that interrogation room so this was not like a reality show. I mean, it was First 48, but, you know, like it was real reality. And I'm like, this mom has just forgiven her son for murdering 6 members of their family. And it really made me think about that, like how, and it's like, you know, for one, her feelings, it's not going to bring any of them back. So it's hating him for what he did is not going to bring anyone back. But for two, who is the one person in the world, no matter what terrible thing you might have done, who will always love you? And what will that do for him when he's spending the rest of his life behind bars, to know that even though he's a 6-time murderer, that there's one person in the world that still loves him? Will that make him just a little bit of a better person going forward?
Sure, it will. And that's what I want to, that's why I want to talk about, like actual really healing. I know it's not entertaining, you know, it's not going to validate what people think and believe, but if people really want to heal, like this is the stuff that hurts people, right? And I use that extreme thing because most of the stuff that we have to deal with is a little bit less than murder, but it still feels the same when you're betrayed. Whether you've been betrayed by your family or abandoned, or betrayed by your partner or abandoned. And we're talking about people that say, I love you, I would never do these kinds of, they tell you everything you want to hear. They actually do take care of you and love you, and then betray you. And then if you react a certain way, Carl Jung says, well, that's just your shadow self. Well, wait a minute. Like animals react that way when they're, you know, backed into a corner or they're scared, right?
I saw a show where there was a lion that killed the lion cubs. One of the female lions went and killed the 2 other cubs, and they banished her from the pride. And
Right.
that it was sort of, and for a lion, that's almost like a death sentence because they have to work together. So even in the animal kingdom, there is this understanding of there's an order to things. There's a way things are done. And if you go against that, you know, then you're going to face this punishment.
I think
I wanted to go back to
that thing is that boss. That's what I think it is. That thing that I'm trying to.
That's what I was going to go back to. Is you said that you fought off all these other things, and you always get to the end, and it's the boss. We're calling it the boss, and it's the one thing that you can't defeat. So it's like the one thing that you could, you know, it's like. So think of that as like a statement, like I could forgive anything but.
Mm-hmm.
So all the other things that come at you in the dream are all the things that you were able to forgive, but the boss is the one thing that you're unable to forgive. And you always end up wrestling into sort of a stalemate situation. In other words, there's something about holding on to that is taking you back to the same place. It's not allowing it to heal.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Now, I don't know what that is, but I just gave you an example of how to think about it. I could forgive anything. Okay. So those are the characters coming at you that you wrestle with, that you shoot at, that you know, I could forgive anything. Okay. That's out of my way. That's out of my way. Because once you forgive, it's out of your way.
Yeah.
I could forgive anything except for that. So now the boss is there, and you go through the same fight with them again and again. And the reason why you never win is because if this example, just to use this example, is that it's the thing that you won't forgive. And ultimately, in the end, it's something that you may not be able to forgive about yourself. You know, like if somebody, here's an example of what Jung would mean by how that could be shadowy, is if it takes 2 to tango. So when you have somebody who betrays you, is there some part of you that says, you idiot, you knew it was coming and you set yourself up for it? Yes, I trusted that person, and then they did this thing to me. But why did I let that happen to begin with?
There's
Either
a part,
I
yeah,
couldn't
there's
see it
definitely,
coming, or I did see it coming, or what part of me makes me such a rube that I would be taken advantage of?
right. No,
Yeah.
that part's that part's definitely there, right? Like, you saw every flag that was there, and yet you believed what came out of their mouth, right? Well, and this is why I'm glad you brought up Robert Moore's work with like Jung and stuff, right? Like, if those 4 archetypes that he discusses, if I would have been working with them in a healthy way, the warrior would have had boundaries at some point, right? And I'm not putting it on the warrior. It's just a method, all right? But like that warrior would have had those boundaries. The king wouldn't have allowed it because the king puts things in right order. Like a king will sacrifice himself for like Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings, right? That's the hardest archetype to come to terms with. But the king will, like Jesus, or the king will sacrifice himself for right order or for the good of everyone. So the king makes decisions based on the good of everyone involved, not just what one person wants or even 2 people want.
And to think that there's a king in your psyche that is that potential to rule your world in the same sort of way.
Yeah. And it was Robert Moore's work that was like, you have these parts of you, but you haven't even been working with them. You just got caught up you just been playing with the magician and the lover. And not only that, you don't really know the full light and dark sides of both of these things, right? It really woke me up is what I'm saying,
I love his work, and I would recommend anyone, King Warrior Magician Lover. Yeah. If you read the first 3 chapters, you'll understand. If you're into Jungian psychology and archetypal psychology, you will eat it up, because he has this theory of how the archetypal structure is configured. He can actually map it out, sort of like as a diagram. So now that those left brain processes, the rational, like, I want to understand how this works, processes, that left brain can come into play and give you something solid to work on, so that you can understand how your own psyche is constructed. And from there, you read the rest of his work and you start understanding how these behaviors manifest. Even though we call them archetypal, they show up in these different forms. Everyone is dealing with these archetypes, because the 4 archetypes of the self they're the king, warrior, magician, lover, or king, queen, warrior, magician, lover. Remember, these are just names for patterns. King for the sort of the ordering, visionary, generative part of yourself, like you said, the part of yourself that's willing to sacrifice. The warrior, the one who sets boundaries, the one who has the discipline, who can stay on task. The lover gives meaning to everything. It indulges. It knows the feeling and the emotion in it. It's the motivation, the muse. That's where that comes from. The magician is the one who applies the skill and the knowledge. And you put the 4 of them together, and this is the very archetypal core of your psyche, what Jung called the archetypal self. And so it's a superstructure of 4 archetypes that all work in unison with each other, ideally.
Perfect. Yeah.
But when the system is not working, there will be something that will get out of whack. Over here, you've got the lover who is in an addictive pattern, and the warrior can't set limits. And the king can't say, get your head out of there. We've got a life to live, and the magician can't think of why, like the magician now is the therapist, or the therapist part of you that's trying to understand what the lover is up to over here, because you're looking at yourself and you're going, okay, I just got off of a 3-day, bender.
Right.
I'm constantly drinking, smoking, fucking, I'm constantly doing these things. I'm indulging in these pleasures, and it's causing dysfunction in the other areas of my life. Why? So this is how you start using the archetypal, this understanding, this framework, helps you to start understanding concretely how your own inner world works and why there might be areas of yourself that's not working. You know, the
It's
lover
beautiful,
over
man.
here has a wound that is licking and it won't get out of that space. And it's not listening to the warrior over here, because this is the same old side of you that always just says, well, you just got to be a tougher, you know, it's the same crap you heard growing up, you know, well, you just got to be more disciplined and you got to be tougher. It's a hard world out there, kid. You know, the lover doesn't want to hear that. That's not what the lover's world is.
No, he's just like, let me indulge in the beautiful. Let me indulge in all the beautiful, lovely, sensual things. Leave me alone.
All the pleasure that comes with it. Yep.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the magician in this scenario is the one who's therapeutically trying to psychoanalyze it and go, well, maybe my mom didn't give me enough attention, and this is why I'm so addictive. And you're just kind of thinking your way through it without, you know, like you're conceptualizing it. And the lover who's in shadow is over there going, dude, you don't get it. You're over there trying to, you know, you're trying to rationalize this shit. This isn't how it works. You know, addiction is about something deeper.
Yeah, let's go
feel
it.
Addiction, and it's actually that's it. And it's trying to find that, you know, the magician is the one who works towards the mystical union, the sort of the alchemist, the one who's like going towards this thing that's supposed to be this, you know, deep union. And the lover over here is going, dude, I'm also trying to find that, but I'm finding it at the end of this needle or in the bottom of that bottle. Because when I do get to the bottom of that bottle, I can finally get to my true feelings.
Yeah.
I can finally get to the true authentic self that's within me and screw all this other BS, because this isn't really me. So you've got what you've got is the lover over here in an addictive cycle, and the other three archetypes that are supposed to keep it in the balance are not relating to it in the right way to speak its language. And then where the lover can maybe go, yeah, you're right, I think I'm overdoing it. So let's see if we can bring our life back into balance. And that is why this is just an example, that boss character, because you're not talking to it in the right way. There's something that's not being acknowledged.
I'm trying to conquer
There's something, you know, hey man, how many times when I was a kid and I was doing all these things, you know, yeah, you're trying to conquer it. And I was like, but guess what? You know, so for me, it was like 8th grade smoking dope at the bus stop kind of thing, you know, and it started getting me in trouble and that kind of stuff. And everybody would, oh, kid, you just can't do it. Just say no to drugs. You know, this was the 80s after all, you know, and they were, you know, and that's what I started hearing from people. Well, you just can't do it. You know, you shouldn't be smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, it makes me feel better. And there's nothing else in this world that makes me feel better right now. And if I don't feel better, then there's this black fucking abyss behind me that I can barely keep myself out of it. And the only way I'm doing it is because of these addictions, because of the self-medicating. I found the means to self-medicate me. And until you give me something concrete that is better medicine, that doesn't have, let's just say, the side effects, then you're not going to talk me out of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, here's the same old voices over here, you know, the patriarchal voices, you know, I can hear the 7th grade football coach going, yeah, you know, getting up in your face and telling you, you know, you can't be, nobody on my team can be a cigarette smoker.
Oh, yeah. Right.
You know,
well,
like,
I find that, like, look, I find this fascinating because Robert Moore, when he got into talking about active imagination, he said, but before you do that, because I have all the playlists on my YouTube channel, by the way, his lectures on all 4 archetypes, like really deep ones. But the coolest thing that he said was to me, he was like, if you want to understand the light and shadow side of the lover archetype, go listen to music. Listen to tons of songs, right? Like Willie Nelson's Whiskey River, Take My Mind, right? Don't let her memory torture me. You're all I've got to take care of me. Whiskey River, don't run dry. See, that's like the dark side of the lover, right? He's trying to fill that void with alcohol because he was betrayed. So something's got to take care of him. Something's got to fill that void, you know? It's crazy. I mean, it sounds so simple, but like when you start working with this stuff, you're like, damn, it's just amazing how much the unconscious is really running the show. And then when they say the great work, now you start to realize, oh, damn, you know, it's real work, right? So,
because your consciousness, what you start realizing once you get on the other side of this far enough, is you realize that there was something about you that set this all up. That created these challenges for you because it's going to make you a more conscious human being in the end. It's going to make you probably a better, or at least a little wiser human being. And you actually have set yourself up to have these experiences, either unconsciously, subconsciously, or, you know, let's get into past lives. It could be something that your soul planned out for you. But I find that to be kind of abstract for most people. And I can stay clearly in the realm of understanding the unconscious and go, yeah, the unconscious is going to make you do the great work of bringing forth everything that's inside of you. And some things are going to be easy because you're going to like them, and other people are going to like them about you. And they're going to come naturally to you. And some things are going to be really hard because people aren't going to like these things about you, and you're not going to like them, but they're still part of you. They need to be brought out. They need to be developed. They need to be conscious. They need to be under the control of the ego. Like, you know, what Jung said about the shadow. It's everything that should be conscious but isn't. So this is the great work, is to make it all come together. And dude, what happens in the end is that you end up in what they call it the marriage of the soul. And this isn't like, you know, this isn't just an analogy. This is a process that can culminate with an experience of being so inner harmonious, so united inside of yourself that it feels like you're married to yourself, which means that every moment of your life is your honeymoon.
Without being a narcissist, by the way. Well, all right. Like,
no, you can't be. You can't be a narcissist and ever be in that space.
Sure. And one of the reasons why I brought this up is because the internet there's a lot of poisonous stuff, in my opinion, about what mature masculinity and mature feminine is, right? To me, it's they're promoting like this toxic, everybody uses that word, but it's so like out of balanced alpha male, like you just need to dominate everything. And it's like, dude, it's easy to dominate things that are weaker than you, right? Like that doesn't have anything to do with like growing as a mature man, right? Like somewhere along the way, we lost this idea of the king, the lover, the magician, like these beautiful archetypes of the man, right? And the warrior, and the woman,
Yep.
And it's like, now it's all about dominating stuff. It's like, dude, okay, we're not at war all the time. When things need to be dominated, they'll be dominated, right? But that's to me, domination, the word domination means to totally dismantle something that's weaker than you. Now, how hard is that? It doesn't take a lot of work to beat up people or dominate things that are weaker than you.
And it's dismissive of what they are. And you know who this reminds me of, right? There's a certain person who's on the national stage who is the biggest bully in the room until someone with more power and wealth comes into the room, and then he acts like a puppy. He's done it with Putin, and he's done it with the guy from Saudi Arabia, the Prince of Saudi Arabia, when he was with him and was like, yeah, if you want to see someone who's really rich, talk to this guy. And he kowtowed to him. But when he gets other people around him who he feels like he's the biggest dog in the room, then he's just brutal in the way that he uses those domination tactics too. But yeah, I've seen that behavior. And I mean, we have this crap programmed into us because we live under a system known as social Darwinism it says that might makes right. We live in the law of the jungle, and that you're going to take whatever you can get and you're going to fight for every last scrap, because that's the game. And that's what the way you have to be in this world. If you're not dominating, then you're being dominated. And there just doesn't seem to be any middle ground for it. And it's because we're not, our paradigm says that there are these either or choices, that you got to be one or the other. And I found that that's even the very way that we conceive of ourselves comes with an inherent fissure in it. There's an inherent split that puts things opposed. It puts things in opposition to each other. So you got the guy who says, well, I'm not exactly a passive beta male, but I'm not, buff bro over here, who's also, has got to dominate everything.
That's the internet making you feel like you have to be in a category. That's
so yeah, you're either some
authenticating.
emo cis boy over here, or alpha male special forces. Yeah. And covered in tribal tattoos. I see these guys who, it's like, yeah, you spend a lot of time in the gym and you've got a lot of tattoos, and boy, do you spend a lot of time in the sun. And you got to look at him and, that got the chiseled face and all that. Like, yeah, you're trying really hard to live up to that image, aren't you? I guess there's some guys who just are bored.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, if that's who they are authentically, right? Then that's fine, man. But it's my problem is my worry, my fear that I project onto the show all the time is that, like, we're letting the world program us, and we're not programming the world. And now there is so much categorization of people, and even when people don't relate to other people, they got to fall into some category, so let's give them a name or whatever. Or even like one of the last dates I went on, I actually had to remove a guy from the area, and the girl told me, I just didn't think you were that kind of a guy. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, I thought you were like a nice guy. And I'm like, I am a nice guy, But she's been on her phone swiping so much, and this was one of those, this is why I've almost given up on dating in my 40s, brother. She's been on her phone swiping so much that because I'm a gentleman, or I try to be, that I must fall into that weak category. So the moment that I had to do something because the guy was being a jerk, now she's not even sure how to think about me. And this is why people don't, it's like, how can we authenticate when everything around us is trying to file us in a cabinet somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Oh, and there's a lot of programming coming in from that, those external sources, and you can't get away from it because it's in your hand all the time. It's coming through that notification screen, and I find this too, that it's been getting me into something that I've been working on lately, is that there's this part of ourselves that we create around our authentic selves that becomes the part of ourselves that deals with the world. And Jung called it the persona. And I've been noticing in a painful sort of way when the persona comes forward instead of the authentic self, the real authentic me. And so I take myself back in time and I go, well, when did this thing start developing in me? Because I can remember being a kid and not having this division, not having this, well, there's this one side of me that's the real me, and there's this other side of me that I present to the world. And it's different, it's a little tougher. It's a little more sometimes flippant. It's a little more sometimes sarcastic. It's sometimes a little more defensive. Sometimes it feels like it's got to prove something. It wants to get a laugh. It needs attention. And I've realized that that persona is what developed because of the way that I had to react to the world and all the messages that it sent me. Well, this is the kind of person you need to be, and this is how you need to dress, and this is what you need to look like, and this is what you need to aspire to, and these are the opinions you need to have, because if you want to be part of this group over here, you know, those are the popular kids, then you need to be more like them. That means that anything in you that they're in opposition to needs to get out of the way real fast. So it goes in the shadow, and then some other thing kind of takes its place. It's almost parasitic. And I've come to realize that so much of that happens before you're even aware of it. That you can turn around one day and ask yourself, how much of me is really authentic? Is it the real me? Especially when I'm around other people. And you start noticing how you act differently when you're with people and when you're with yourself. And that is where you start identifying that persona, because the persona also has a shadow side to it.
Everything seems to have a
sort
shadow
of like
side, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's the way the whole system in the psyche is it's all constructed through what Jung called compensation. Everything in the psyche is meant to balance. And when something gets out of whack or out of balance in the psyche, what you get is a counter force that develops on the other side of it.
Okay.
So they go hand in hand with each other. So you could have like you see it a lot in dreams. You'll see this compensatory force at work in the dream. So it'll be like, you know, you might have the person who, let's say that their shadowy issue is that they are a little too sure of themselves. They're they have this thing where they are constantly needing to prove themselves, and they come across as cocky or arrogant. Now they're having dreams about the opposite kind of character. They could be walking down the street, and here comes the homeless dude out of the shadows, and they end up in this wrestling match, and now they're on the ground, and it causes this big scene. And let's just say the end of the dream, there's no resolution to it. What they're actually seeing in the form of that homeless guy is the compensatory force in their own psyche for their own arrogance, because it's choosing someone who is supposed to be from the very bottom of society. You start thinking you're better than everyone else. Now you start dreaming about the kinds of people that we consider or are thought of commonly as being less than everyone else.
Gotcha.
It's a compensatory force. So this is how everything in the psyche works. And that's why we have the shadow system. The shadow side, there's a shadow side to everything in the psyche, because this is how it all works.
Sure.
But what you come to eventually is that you find that the shadow system will produce something new in you that unifies the opposites, that unifies these shadowy opposites in the psyche into what he calls the archetype in its fullness. And this is where Moore's work becomes a manual for self-actualization.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've seen the glyph that he had talking about that with the two pyramids on like coming together. It was. I'm glad you're familiar with them, because I was thinking, man, nobody knows what I'm talking about. You know. So
really
I've already.
It's cool that you're into it.
I've already kept you over time here, but I want to ask you a couple, like two final questions before we let you go. And so, another thing that I struggle with when I'm trying to help people, when I'm not doing the radio show and I'm specifically trying to help people like get out of body and do certain things, is this barrier that I come across. I can help people relax, bro. I can help people focus. I can help people use their imaginations and visualize. I'm really good at that. But where I find a boundary and where I need help with in helping people is 1, nightmares, and 2, sleep paralysis. And I think both of these things run together, like in some sense of the word. Because what we were talking about is shadow stuff, right? Like, but how does that transfer into nightmares or sleep paralysis? Because this isn't just shadow stuff that's doing this. Or maybe it is. Why does it have to be so intense, so terrifying to people? Because it's a very big boundary for people. I can get people all the way up to that vibratory state, dude, but some people will go straight into a nightmare, or they'll go straight into that terror feeling of sleep paralysis.
Yeah, it's fear of death. Yeah. So let's get to that. Let's put a bookmark on that. The first thing is to understand is that the nightmare is a compensatory force. It works. The Jung's conception of this works so many ways. The nightmare is like I said earlier. It's like a big flashing sign showing that something is wrong. But when you deal with these really shadowy nightmare characters, monsters and stuff like that, what you're often dealing with is something that is acting compensatory within the psyche. It's, in other words, you ask yourself, what is this thing trying to balance about my ego that's out of whack, about my conscious mind that is out of whack? And the harder and the worse the nightmare is, the more one-sided something is on the other side, it's the more out of whack it is. You know, like if you have somebody who's got a little bit too much pride, their nightmare with the homeless person, the beggar, maybe isn't, so bad. But if they're really far on that spectrum, really arrogant, really full of themselves, really thinking of themselves as superior, now the compensatory force on the other side has to be even stronger, because that's the way the psyche balances itself.
Trippy. Okay.
And if you can reckon with that thing on the other side, then if you ultimately what you're trying to do is to come to some sort of middle ground with it. Doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be besties, but you recognize yourself in it. But it's so hard, because for the person who thinks of themselves as superior and they see the beggar over there, who's now attacking them in their dream, and they don't understand why. They feel like, well, why would this beggar be attacking me? And now they start feeling like a victim or whatever. Well, it's because there's a message there that you're so out of balance that you're a threat to the rest of the psyche.
That makes sense.
And remember, most of the psyche is autonomous and independent, which means it also has its own existence. And when the ego is out of whack, then it's threatening the existence of the rest of the psyche.
Same thing with sleep paralysis, you think?
Okay, so the thing with sleep paralysis is that it's a natural state while you're dreaming. It's also called rematonia. So it just means muscle slackness. Sleep paralysis is natural so that you don't start acting out your dreams, thrashing around.
Sure.
It can still happen. That's called leakage. But,
yeah, no, I don't mean I mean the terror
but
side
you
of
mean
it.
Right. And so if you're using, now sleep paralysis is also the state where what Bob Monroe called mind awake and body asleep.
Yeah, it's natural.
It's the body asleep part of it. If your mind can wake up while your body's in that sleep paralysis state, then hey, if you don't freak out, well, now your sleep paralysis becomes a launching pad for lucid dreams and all kinds of wild stuff, or out of body experience and stuff like that. But dude, I found that most people can't get past the vibration stage, and I'll include myself in this category, is because it's leaving your body is equated with death. And your body, whether you think, whether you know that intellectually or not, when you're trying to get into, out of body experience, you still are dealing with the fact that as soon as your awareness leaves your body starts reacting from a place of terror because it thinks it's dying, because it equates out of body with death. So that's the thing that you have to get past. And I don't think most people can do it. If they can't consciously get into that state, or they have that reaction with terror.
There are a few people that that I know they get super excited when their body gets paralyzed, and they get happy. We're about to have an out of body experience, but then
party time, baby.
Yeah, right. And then there's one specific case that I had where a girl said that she had sleep paralysis and night terrors her whole life, and then she went to one of the talks that I did, and it went away. Like, she could get to the vibratory state and be okay, but then after a while it came back, right? So she was like, well, I just need to hear your voice or whatever. And I'm like, now I don't need that. That's not good, because you're using what I'm doing as a crutch. And it's not, I didn't say that specifically to her, but I said, I didn't know how to get her past it. Like, I even asked her, I said, is it a fear of death? Is it? And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a super, like, unconscious fear of death that maybe sometimes people aren't even aware that that's what they're really afraid of deep down, you know?
And having to expand their understanding of the world in a way that challenges everything that the world tells them. You know, I just wrote a book. It's now with the editor, and it's going through the publishing process. It's coming out this fall, Science of the Paranormal. And one of the things that comes out in the study of the paranormal, the science of it, and this includes psychic and out of body and things like that, is that the people who find these capabilities within themselves, the greatest wrestling match they have is with themselves over the fact that, well, there's a lot of voices in society that say that these things can't be real because we don't have explanations for them that fit within the materialist paradigm. It says that everything has to be explained through physical processes. So you'll get someone who, like, let's say that they have a dream about something that happens in the future and it comes true. And now they got to reckon with this. Wait a minute. On the one hand, I'm told this stuff is impossible, but on the other hand, I have personal experience that tells me that it is. So now, you know, can consciousness exist separately from the body? No. The materialist paradigm says, no, that can't happen. That's it's death, but it's not even death. When you die, there's nothing. And so you can't exist separately from your body. If you think that you are existing separately from your body, now we need to start testing you to see what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of built-in stuff that people won't, this is going to be in the background as they're trying to learn how to have out-of-body experience.
I see what you're saying. Gotcha.
Do you want to be a freak? Because only the freaks do those kinds of things. You've been hearing this since you were even too young to understand what you were really hearing, but you hear it all the time. Oh yeah, the people who do that, the people who think that they can leave their body, that's all a bunch of, you know. So then you got to deal with the social conditioning and social shaming and things like that. Then you have to deal with the rational side that's been trained to think that none of this stuff is possible, can't be real. But then you have the experience and prove to yourself that it is, but it's kind of imaginative, and it's hard to say that anything about it was really objectively real. So were you really just dreaming it? So it just brings up too much shit in people's minds, and they get lost in it, and they can't get their way out of it. They have to become conscious of it, first of all, you know, that there are these voices, and they're just sort of feelings. They're not even necessarily articulated, but there's a real fear that is programmed into us. And I think that that's what people butt up against when they start trying to get into some of the stuff that will teach them what their greater capabilities are.
Yeah, and there's also I think the thing in the background too, brother, that people go, well, I don't want to be a person that gets tricked into believing this is real too. I don't want to be the dummy.
I hear that all the time. Yep.
You know.
Yep. Oh, we get that. You know, I'm the moderator at the Past Lives subreddit. I've been there forever. And Reincarnation, I'm also a moderator there. I kind of adopted these communities because they needed to have kind of an adult running the show. I guess that's the way I'll put it. I felt like someone needed, someone needed, and it was there. These communities had been orphaned, and I came along after moderating the dreams and the Jung subreddits. I came along, and so I had some experience with it, and I found these subreddits just sitting there, So anyway, we've revitalized those communities. We have good moderators there. We have good communities. And one of the things that you'll see when you hang out there enough is a lot of people who come in and say, well, I did a past life regression, and well, I don't know, it just seems like I'm making all this stuff up. And
I've said that before.
I don't want to fool myself. I'm like, okay, well, I understand that, but at the same time, when you're doing it, you have to just kind of be in the process and let things happen the way it's going to happen. And then let if you want to try to verify anything later, then you can. But I'll remind you what Joe McMoneagle said about remote viewing. He said, at the end of the day, you can't tell remote viewing or any of these other psychic abilities apart from using your imagination. And he said, we will never be able to do it, and therefore we will never have a physical science that will be able to truly explain this, because it does use the imagination, but that doesn't mean that it isn't real. That when you go into that portal, you imagine that place in your mind so strongly, it's a doorway that you step through, and next thing you know, you are outside of your body and you are looking down and going, who's that down there? Maybe I'll go walk out of my house. Maybe I'll go to the next town. Maybe I'll go to the moon. But now I'm out of my body and I have that kind of freedom. And then they come back and they go, well, damn, that all seemed like a dream.
Man.
Well, but it is a dream, but it's not a dream. You actually did have an experience in another sort of dimension.
Bro, this is where I get tossed up, man. And this is a whole other thing. But anytime people go, man, that seemed like a dream. It's I know that type of OBE they're talking about. But there is one that you can have, I swear on everything, my whole life and existence and everything that I could swear on, that you're going to know. And this is the one where I try to get people to peel themselves out. Okay? It's nothing like a dream. Nothing. Nothing like a dream whatsoever. Not a lucid dream, nothing. There is no difference between what you see and feel now and that place, except a slight hum. And that's it. Right.
Yeah. And there are tens of thousands of people who've had that experience from near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And the moment their body dies or is in trauma, they step out of their body and they look down and they go, holy shit, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I can exist separately from my body. My body's down there dead. Yeah, I can see them. They're got to put the paddles on my chest. They're going to try to resuscitate me, And they're looking around and they can see and experience things that are physically, objectively real, but they're experiencing it from that other point of view. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but that's the kind of experience I had. But I didn't die. I just peeled myself out.
You don't have to die.
You don't have to die to do it. But there are times that I've been out of body, like when I was doing Greg Doyle stuff, where you imagine this. Next thing you know, you're standing by your door. But then it's just weird, and sometimes it's hazy, or a dream will start to slip in. I've felt those too, so I've realized that this is not, it's this or that. It's like different levels of awareness and consciousness, different levels while your body's asleep, so to speak. But
well, Joe said that Joe dealt with that. Joe McMoneagle, who is Psychic Spy 001. He was the Army's original remote viewer, and he was spectacular at it. And he said that he learned how to different. So he's actually, when he's viewing something, he's actually seeing something that's true and objective reality. Because for Joe as a remote viewer, it might be like, we need you to go inside, send your mind inside the secret underground facility in Russia, and you report to us what's there. And he could do it. But here's the mind blower about that, Joe. Is in the end, he said, no, I wasn't sending my mind to the location. I was finding the location within myself, and that's what I'm viewing. Do you get it?
It's true. Yeah, I get it. That's trippy, though. It's a trippy thought.
So this is the man who's got the more training and more demonstrated ability in psychic functioning than almost any other human being to ever live. So he's the guy that we want to talk to. He trained with Bob Monroe. And by the way, a joke came to mind because you were telling me about that girl who wanted to hear your voice. Well, Bob said that Bob created a tape for Joe to use because he was getting so deep into the remote viewing stuff, and he would go on the weekends to Monroe and get the training that he needed. And he said really it was just to kind of get a break for a while. He loved hanging out with Bob. And so he said that Bob created this tape for him to take back and he could play. And it's, binaural beats with a little meditation on it.
Sure.
Joe said that he played it so much that the tape got worn out. And so he came back to Bob and said, can we record another tape? And Bob looks at him and says, how many times have you listened to have you listened to that? And he's like, so much that I wore the tape out. And Bob looks at him and says, so you're going to tell me that you can't just press play in your mind and hear me and all of that very clearly without needing a tape?
Sure.
You don't have it.
Like you don't need
so
the crutch.
Ingrained in your own memory. So that would be what I would tell someone who said that they needed to hear your voice in order to. It's like, well, if you've listened to me that much, you should be able to recreate my voice in your own mind.
Or just get to that state, man. Like remote viewing and I think remote viewing and OBEs, I think all these things they're separate forms for sure. Like I've practiced remote viewing. I'm not that good at it, but I can definitely get OBE, right? But they're not, when it comes to consciousness though, I don't think even Joe McMoneagle or anybody has all of the answers as to how all of this is working in consciousness itself, right? I think it still needs to be explored, no matter how many credentials they have. And I think Robert Monroe said that too, it's so chaotic, this place, right, of consciousness that after all of his explorations, there's still so many unanswered questions. But the one thing that we are on the same page about is the psyche thing. I've learned a lot from you about that and a lot from Carl Jung. And I've just got into Robert Moore's work, and it's opening up. Dude, it's opening up a whole new portal of things for me, man.
It was the same for me. And I was just thinking, for anybody out there that wants to look this up and get the Cliff Notes version, there is a website called The Art of Manliness. So if you put in Robert Moore archetypes, Art of Manliness, it'll take you to, they did a whole series on this. But it's for magazine. It's The Art of Manliness is kind of like an online magazine. And you might hear manliness and be like, Art of Manliness. They actually, a lot of it is, it's almost like Jordan Peterson-esque. Kind of you'll feel better if you clean your room and, find something to conquer, in the sense of something in life that you can really put yourself into, so that you're not just sitting around with your dick in your hand playing video games all day,
right.
like many young men are doing right now.
I'm an old man. I still do that sometimes. Man.
Hey, it's fun, and I don't knock it too much, but it was kind of like this. So Art of Manliness has there's this idea that there's sort of, that you can be a man without having to prove anything, but there are sort of traditional traits of manliness that we can kind of cultivate within ourselves, just because it might be associated, with, it's like, well, you don't necessarily have to dominate, but isn't it fun to win?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And what does it take to win? Well, you need to be a competitor. Okay, well, competitiveness is something that, it can come naturally to you if you'll sort of embrace it, So anyway, in The Art of Manliness, just so that people don't get turned off by the name, they have some great write-ups of all of this. So if anybody out there wanted sort of the 10-minute introduction to it, which they've already gotten with us talking about this stuff, but you can go and read it for yourself and see how he was helping us to understand the way that we tick inside, which is what got me into Dreamwork to begin with, was that I realized that my dreams were reflecting things about me that I didn't really know about myself. There was this whole thing it was brand new to me when I first encountered it in my early 20s. And I went, what, you mean there's this whole other side of my mind that I'm just almost, completely ignorant of? I was like, well, yeah. I mean, if you think in a way, like, how much of your dreams come to you out of this place? It's got to be your own mind. They come to you out of this place and you don't understand. Like, you look back on it and you're like, I don't understand any of this. And it's because you don't understand the parts of yourself where the dream is coming from.
Yeah, that's
from that
exactly
other point of view. It makes perfect sense to the other part of you, that part of your mind, the unconscious part that's, it's helping you to create this dream so that you can understand it. But there was a simple logic that went with it. It went, well, if there's so much about a dream I can't understand, and the dream is connected with me, then it means there's so much about me that I don't understand. And then what? Oh, wow. And then that's when the ball started rolling. And I was like, so yeah, this is true. There's so much about me that I don't understand. I had the experience of having, when I was studying shadow and I was trying to understand it. And I'm like, I don't know how much of this really applies to me. I thought I was in like my, I don't know, third year of college or something. And, I thought I was some enlightened, young, soon to be college graduate, like, I don't know. I just had this idea of myself. And one of the things that came up that he talked about was like racism is very, very, very shadowy behavior. And I looked at it and I was like, well, I'm not a racist. I know it's the first things you think of. Well, I have a black friend.
Oh my God. Dude.
I dated a black girl once, my dad played in jazz bands, he would be like the one white guy. And so I hung out with him, I thought I was cool, Well, the shadow side of me that heard me say, I'm not a racist, was like, oh, we're going to show you. So what happened was it started erupting into my mind in my everyday life. And I remember the moment clearly. I came out of my apartment and it was in a city neighborhood. There was a bus stop across the street, very high traffic area. A lot of people, all day long, the bus was coming along picking people up. This is a city area. There was like a mom she must have had 4 kids under the age of 6 and a 5th one in her belly. And she's this sort of typical urban, black girl. And she's got this whole troop of kids. And I look over, my mind in a snap takes all of it in, and I heard this voice in a very derogatory way say, welfare queen. And I went, wait a minute. Did I just, I didn't just hear it like a voice, like it was me, and it had all of the contempt and arrogance and superiority. It was all when those 2 words, welfare queen. And I went, oh shit.
Yeah. How do you even know she's on welfare? Right.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. I don't even know. Just because she's got, 5 kids, she's young and she's black, and she's at a bus stop. So there's something in me just making this huge assumption, and whether true or not, as far as if she's on welfare, I don't know. But it was that, it made me realize that I was racist too. And I don't know how you can be a human being on this earth that grows up in societies that are divided by class and race and, ethnicity and all that. I don't know how you can come up in an environment like that and not have something in you that's racist.
Well, that's how you heal it.
Are built into
You let it come up, man, because you became conscious of it. That's how to heal it
Yes.
first. That's what I'm saying. Now you have to do the work to heal it, which I'm sure you've done because that was a long time ago, right? I'm hoping. But
I hope so too. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean?
But
That's what I really enjoy doing, and I know it's not fun and it's super conspiratorial and it's not dark and scary. It's not that much entertaining to talk about, but man, like the thing is it is the stuff that I'm passionate about, dude. You know, I love conscious exploration, JM, and I know, dude, man, we've really went over time here, but at some point, like I guess I need it to actually mean something. I need it to help too, not just be something fun, right? Like
Yeah.
I need it to help, I guess.
Well, I can recommend something for you. Do you know who Mother Mira is? Meera, Mother Mira.
No.
Twice a day, she has a YouTube channel. She is a Hindu darshan healer. She is considered to be a bodhisattva. These are just big words, but basically, when she was a very young child, she realized that she is an avatar in this world for the Divine Mother, and that her job in this world is to be a representative. She's a human being who laughs and smiles, and she can also be quite serious, especially when she sits down. She does this twice a day. She sits down in front of a camera and she stares into the camera. And what you do is you stare back at her. Just clear your mind, stare at her.
I can do
Try
that.
to focus your entire attention on her. And I say this because if you want to know, like, the thing that makes all this consciousness exploration, like, really solidify, like, to mean something, is that you're doing it and using it in some kind of, I'll just say, higher purpose.
Yeah.
For something, curiosity and exploration is all well and good. But there comes a point when the thing behind the scenes is making you realize that there was a point to doing this and that it needed you to advance to the point where it could really start to engage with you in a more direct sort of way. A friend of mine, Ryan Hurd, teaches lucid dreaming. In fact, sleep paralysis is one of the states that they cultivate to do this, right? He said that he did this. He was such a natural lucid dreamer. He had these wild experiences. He did it for years, like, and you could say like almost nightly basis where he's lucid dreaming. He's deep into it. He's done all of the things, had all the fun. He said there came a point when it wasn't working anymore. And he couldn't figure out why. He was using all the techniques. He was doing all the things he needed to do. And it was like something, he came to this revelation that the thing that had been behind the scenes the whole time as he's having these lucid dreams and just letting him run around like a kid and have fun was waiting for his ass to grow up so that it could now engage with him in a deeper sort of way. It's like, well, why didn't you ever come and find out more about me? This intelligence behind the scenes that's been there all along. You mean you've been lucid and having all these experiences and you didn't realize that there was a point to all of this? That this is sort of a learning situation, learning simulation? Well, what are you learning about yourself? Okay, you've become more aware of yourself. What does that mean? It means that you can engage more with the larger intelligence or consciousness that we're all part of. And that is the thing why I recommend like looking at Mother Mira.
I'll check it out.
If you just sit there and you start looking her in the eyes, and then she starts kind of communicating with you through her higher self, and then that gives you this like where your abilities can be used in a special way in this world, she'll show you how to do it. And she'll guide you to the places and the people that you need to be able to realize this potential in yourself.
That's cool,
So that might
man.
be
I'll
the
check
thing
it
that's
out.
missing.
Well, tell everybody
bro.
how they can check you out, man, because the only thing I'm going to be staring at in the next 5 minutes if we don't get out of here is the back of my eyelids, brother. This was a long, cool
man.
conversation like we always have. But tell everybody how they can find you and your links and all of that good stuff, bro.
Yeah, man. Dreamschool.net. Let's do that. And jmdebord.com. You put in my name, JM Debord. I've got books out there. I teach online classes. I'm at Reddit all the time. I'm Radal. I would hope that there's anyone who's stuck, with us through these, 2 hours of conversation, which I kind of got, lost track of time too. That there, I can teach you Dreamwork, and then you can run with this. And whatever means that I can get this information to you, I'd be happy to do it. YouTube at Radal. That's my channel. jmdebord.com. Yeah. Dreamschool.net is probably the best place because I've got all these online courses there and I teach all these different aspects of dream interpretation. So come see me there. I would love to have any of your people show up and, I would be happy to teach them what I know.
Right on.
And learn from them too.
Yeah, and you never know too. Like we might do a show one day where you can call in and talk more about your dreams and let him help you with them. We've done that before too. So
yeah, we'll do some live dream interpretation. Yeah, man, it would be absolutely. Yeah. I would love to do that
for sure. All right, guys, we're gonna get out of here.
There it
Thanks,
is.
JM, for coming on.
Great
see you guys next week.
Yeah, man. All right, hey, be in touch, bro.
Not now, y'all. Sweet dreams.
She don't care if I come home late or if I don't come home for 7 long days. She knows that I'm hers. She